Have a seat. We'll call this meeting to order. Councilmember DiPolito, we need you at the dais to call this meeting to order. I'd like the youth officials to come forward and lead us in the pledge. If we'd all stand and face the flag.
No, right here, right here. Just...
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In the podium, Joe, are you going to introduce everyone?
Morgan Rogers.
Morgan Rogers, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is indeed my pleasure here tonight to introduce our Youth Day officials. But if you would give me just a minute to explain to the crowd, in case somebody doesn't know about the Youth Day Parade, I'd like to take just a minute. If a single event can define a community, then the Francis McGahee Youth Day Parade is Roswell. 63 years ago, a group of ladies, including Francis McGahee, the parade's namesake, gathered to raise money to provide recreational activities for the youth of Roswell. This parade was started as a highlight of those efforts. I submit to you that the Youth Day Parade is the history of our city, and that the youth we honor is the future of our city. This year's theme is Hats Off to Roswell's Youth. This simple theme at first seems almost silly, but this expression means praise, respect, and admiration for someone or something they have done. With this theme for this year's parade, the Commission is expressing their respect and admiration for the youth of Roswell for being the beacon of light for the bright future of our great community. Hats off to Roswell's youth. Now I would like to introduce this year's officials. If you remember, Mr. Mayor, the mayor and council cannot ride in the parade because y'all are over the age limit. But we have representatives today from Roswell, Centennial, Blessed Trinity, Fellowship, and the Cottage School, the high schools here in Roswell. That are willing to invite y'all to come and ride in the parade.
Thank you.
But in order to do that, they want to sit in your chair for just a couple of minutes. So as I call the names of the officials, if you go up and take the seat of your official. First, representing the mayor, we have from Centennial High School, Axel Martinez. Representing Councilman Rich DiPolito from Fellowship, we have Anna Soderling.
You're going to be calling this, aren't you?
Representing Councilwoman Betty Price from Fellowship School, we have Caroline Stroud. Representing Becky Wynn, we have from Blessed Trinity, Lindsay Weiss. Representing Councilwoman Nancy Diamond from the Cottage School, we have Jake Daunt. Representing Councilman Jerry Orleans from the Cottage School, we have James Dorsey. Representing Councilman Kent Eigelhart from Roswell High School, we have Justin Bellamy. Representing Kay Love, who is being represented tonight by Michael Fisher, we have Victoria Brock from Roswell High School. Representing Police Chief Rusty Grant from Blessed Trinity, and this is the name I've been dreading all night, Amit Kalarako. That close? Representing Fire Chief Ricky Spencer from Centennial High School, we have Haley McKay. And representing the Roswell Recreation Commission, whose chairman is Deborah Ewing, tonight we have Steve Stroud standing in for Mrs. Ewing. We have from Roswell High School, Danny Corey.
We're going to start off with the proclamation for Roswell's 63rd Annual Youth Day celebration. Whereas the youth of Roswell represent the future of our great city, and whereas the youth of Roswell are an important part of the community, and whereas the city of Roswell for the past 63 years has celebrated its youth with a citywide parade and festival, and whereas the theme for the 63rd Annual Youth Day celebration is Hats Off to Roswell. Now therefore I, Axel Martinez, Youth Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim Saturday, October 12, 2013, as Youth Day in the City of Roswell. And I call upon all our citizens, young and old, to help us celebrate and promote this most honored day in our community. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Roswell to be affixed this 23rd day of September 2013.
Good job.
Mr. Mayor, before you move on, we'd like to announce our Grand Marshal for this year's parade. May I do that?
Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. In selecting the 2013 Grand Marshal, the Recreation Commission chose an individual that has had a tremendous impact on the youth of our community, Mr. Fred Williams. Fred served as a teacher and coach at Roswell High School for 13 years. Fred was first appointed to the Roswell Recreation Commission in 1988. During his 25 years on the commission, he served as chairman for 18 of those years. Just a few of the milestones our department was able to accomplish under Fred's leadership include the addition of 128,722 square feet of indoor program space, including the Physical Activity Center, the Visual Arts Center, East Roswell Recreation Center, Hembry Park, the Adult Recreation Center, and Arts Center West. We added 596 acres of parkland, including the Lita Thompson Memorial Park, Big Creek Park, Riverside Park, Don White Memorial Park, and Grimes Bridge Park. Under his tutelage, we were able to pass 3 separate bond referendums that were approved by the Roswell voters to expand acreage and operation of the departments by $39 million. During that time, we also added mountain bike trails, disc golf courses, two dog parks, 2 community gardens, 2 spray grounds, and we gained river access. Our agency was named 5 times the Agency of the Year in 1988, 1990, 1998, 2004, and 2011. Fred pushed us to be the 32nd agency in the country to be accredited by the National Recreational Park Association for adhering to the 144 standards of operation. Currently, there are almost 200 agencies that are accredited. and we are the gold medal finalist as National Agency of the Year for 2011, 2012, and 2013. The Recreation Department is a better agency because of Fred Williams. His dedication, his commitment, and his hard work will endure for many generations, and it makes Roswell a better place to live, work, and play. Please welcome to the podium the 2013 Youth Day Grand Marshal, Mr. Fred Williams. Mr. Mayor, Fred asked me earlier today, he said, I'm not going to have to say anything to Emma. And I said, I don't think so. But as mayor, if you wanted him to say a few words, it's well within your purview.
Yes, I'd like to hear a bit.
You're in big trouble now. It's quite an honor for me, and I appreciate it. I came here in 1967. This town has been great for me and my family. I met my wife here, and it's just been wonderful. I can never repay to this city what it has given to me. And hopefully, sometimes I have given a little bit back. I hope so, but it's been great. All my life, I've sat on the curb and watched the parade go by and clap. Now I get to lead the parade, and that's quite an honor. Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to recognize Joy Schwarluck as Georgia PTA Middle School Outstanding Principal of the Year. All right, then. And to introduce the City of Roswell's new Cultural Arts Center coordinator, Sarah Chandler, is Rich DiPolito.
Maybe I can help.
No,
I think
this is trial by fire.
Yeah.
They got it handled. We're going to just need to work them through here. Be patient.
They're going to make this difficult for me. You can see that, don't you?
Take them a minute. They'll get there.
All right, well, I guess it'll be my pleasure to introduce the City of Roswell's new Cultural Arts Center coordinator, Miss Sarah Chandler.
If you don't mind, Mayor and Council members, I'd like to just say a few words about Sarah. I'm so thrilled to have her on board. She comes to us from Philly, but she's a Georgia girl. She grew up in Macon, so she's come back home. She has a master's degree in theater administration, theater management. She has years of experience running facilities and rental operations and special events, etc., and we're thrilled to have her. So, Sarah, you want to say a few words?
I just want to say thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Roswell's got a lot of good energy, I can already tell. So I'm excited to be a part of it. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. We're so looking forward to having you here and all the wonderful things that you're going to do. So thank you.
Next on our agenda, we're going to introduce our new Deputy Police Chief, Craig Easterwood. And Becky, could you please start us?
Interesting. I'd like to ask Chief Grant to come introduce the Deputy Police Chief, Craig Easterwood.
Thank you. I'm excited today to introduce our new Deputy Chief of Police, Craig Easterwood. Chief Easterwood comes from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office after 23 years with them. He retired. He was a captain with them. He's known as a problem solver in law enforcement. Fortunately for the police department, we don't have a lot of problems to solve, but that's what he's known as. I told him earlier today that he's actually the second best deputy chief of police we've ever had. And if he listens to me, though, I'll make him the best. So I want to introduce Chief Easterwood.
I'd just like to say that I'm extremely excited and humbled to be associated with an agency of the caliber of the Roswell Police Department and the City of Roswell. This is a fantastic city, I can tell you already, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, then next, Becky Wynn will be recognizing our K-9 Bart joining the Roswell Police Department.
Go ahead. K-9 Unit Bart has completed his training and reported for his first duty assignment with K-9 Officer Robert Colombo. Now I would ask Chief Grant to introduce him.
For years, the Roswell Police Department has had one K-9, and right now we have two, which is really a significant step, and I want to thank you all for making that possible. Appearing with Bart is his handler, Officer Colombo, and I'm not sure where Officer Colombo is from, but Bart is actually from the Netherlands, and they both have undergone extensive training, and we're excited to have them as part of the police department. I've noticed in reading the shift reports, Bart's name is very frequently mentioned as assisting on traffic stops and finding drugs, and he's just been he literally hit the ground running, so I want to welcome him.
Would Bart like to say anything? Would you like to say anything?
Sure. Thank you very much. You want to say something first, Bart? No? Okay. Mayor Wood, Councilwoman Wynn, all the other fellow councilmen and women, Chief Grant, now Chief Easterwood, most of all my family, I'd like to say thank you very much for this opportunity. K-9 Bart is a very, very good dog. We're going to do great things, as we already have. He's a 22-month-old German Shepherd. He was actually born in Germany, and at 6 months old, went to Holland to train until he was a year and a half old. He's only been inside the United States for just under 4 months. Already, we've made a big difference on the road, and I'd like to thank Chief Grant for the opportunity to have Bart. Sir? So far, we, I think a combined total of about 2 or 3 ounces of marijuana. There you go. Apparently so. So far, in the short time we've worked, just over 2.5 months or so, we've got about 2.5 ounces of marijuana. We've already roughly about 11, 12 grams of meth. Last night, or let's see, was it last night? No, 2 nights ago at the studios or at the Atlanta Hotel, we got some marijuana and some other paraphernalia out of the room, and we almost confiscated 1 car already. Unfortunately, I had a lien holder, so we didn't want it anymore. We gave it back. But other than that, we have tracked. He does want to say something. Oh, the duck. We have tracked 1 suspect so far, and we apprehended him. So, K-9 Bart's, like Chief Grant said, K-9 Bart's hit the ground running. Mama Becky, thank you for everything, all your support. Chief Grant, thank you for everything. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Very nice dog.
Thanks.
All right. All right, then. I will now be reading a proclamation for Rivers Alive 2013. And if I could get Kirby to stand up and come to the podium. And the fish.
What kind of fish?
Very diverse group.
And the fish.
Dogs, people, fish, and ducks. All right, then. Rivers Alive 2013. Whereas the citizens of Roswell in the state of Georgia recognize that all life is dependent upon clear water and strive to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of Georgia's waters. And whereas watersheds, the key component of the hydrologic water cycle, are an integral part of all Earth systems. And whereas Georgia has 70,150 miles of streams and rivers that nourish our native plants and wildlife. And whereas Roswell has 1,675 miles of streams and is fortunate to have the Chattahoochee River running through it. And whereas we must bring together citizens, community representatives, and local government leaders to restore and preserve our watersheds. And whereas the mission of Rivers Alive is to create awareness of and involvement in the preservation of Georgia's water resources through this annual volunteer cleanup of the 14 river basins in Georgia. And whereas Keep Roswell Beautiful, in partnership with the City of Roswell, the City of Alpharetta, the Alpharetta Nature Resources Commission, and the Chattahoochee Nature Center, is presenting the largest cleanup in Metro Atlanta on Saturday, September 28th, from 8:30 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. And whereas Keep Roswell Beautiful is also continuing their great annual duck race to be held immediately after the cleanup event at 12:30 p.m. on Oxbow Road in Big Creek. Now therefore, I, Axel Martinez, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby declare September 28, 2013 as Rivers Alive Day in Roswell. Encourage all our citizens to take part in this cleanup event. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and sealed this 28th day of September 2013.
I recognize the folks at the podium and see if they want to say anything.
I see that we have Keep Roswell Beautiful, a few board members, and Kirby the Duck. Would you like to say anything?
Kirby? Yes, I just want to make sure that everybody has rented their ducks. 3 ducks, $5, you could win $100. Kim has ducks, so run and see her real quick. But we're hoping everybody comes out. Our Rivers Alive event has changed a lot over the 14 years that most of us have been here doing it. We've gone from 6 tons of trash to 1 ton of trash. And we do believe that we've had a great part in that. So we hope to see you all.
So how do they get in touch with Kim to buy rent ducks?
How else could we get in touch with Kim to purchase these ducks?
Kim is located in Suite 235 here at City Hall. So you can just come on up between the hours of 8 and 5, Monday until this Friday. And then you can also get ducks at Rivers Alive on Saturday morning. And Mr. Mayor, could we have a picture with all of you and Kirby?
Sure.
Go ahead. Now, tell her.
May I ask where the duck race is going to take place?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as you said in the proclamation, it's going to be on Oxbow Road at the footbridge. And we're hoping, Mr. Mayor, that you'll be there to start the ducks on their way.
Ask the council.
It's going to start at 12:45.
All right, then if I could please ask the councils to step down and take a picture with the Roswell Beautiful. Both councils.
Both councils. Come on. Julie, where do you? Okay. Bobby, do you want it back there or in front? Okay, follow Julie. Julie's in the gray right here. Oh, you can't see her.
Okay, don't wait. I would, if it's okay, I'd like for if y'all are done, if everybody's got pictures, I'd like for you to use Fred up and have a picture with you. Right there, too. Come on, Fred.
In the center,
Behind the fish.
Great job.
Yeah, I know. My favorite color. Those with your palms. I wish I
All right, then. We're going to transition into recognizing October 2013 as Roswell Arts and Humanities Month. Roswell Arts and Humanities Month. Whereas October is National Arts and Humanities Month, as so designed by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades. And whereas our nation and the city of Roswell have a rich artistic heritage, and whereas literature, theater, dance, art, and music capture our history, build bridges amongst us, provoke dialogue, and often raise important questions. And whereas artistic expression resonates with us, challenges us, and teaches us important lessons about ourselves and each other. And whereas the arts are vital components of our children's education, teaching students to observe closely, interpret creatively, and think critically. And participating in the arts ignites wonder and imagination. And whereas Roswell has a strong commitment to culture and arts, and this dedication drives economic progress in our community for all our residents and visitors, and is sure to entertain and enlighten all ages. Now therefore, I, Axel Martinez, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim October 2013 as Roswell Arts and Humanities Month, and call upon all our citizens to celebrate National Arts and Humanities Month with many special programs, activities, and events. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Roswell to be affixed this 23rd day of September 2013. I'd like to call up Morgan Timmis.
Good evening, Mayor and Councils, Mayors and Council. I have a small group of folks with me here this evening. We're so excited to celebrate Arts and Humanities Month here in Roswell. As we have for several years now, we produce a brochure that lists all of the activities that we are aware of. I'm sure there are others going on. And this year we have 37 unique events in 1 month. And something that was done differently, thanks to the idea of our Cultural Arts Board, soon to be Roswell Arts Commission Chair Rochelle Muka, we reached out to the educational institutions in our community as well as some businesses and asked them to think about developing an event in commemoration of Arts and Humanities Month, and a few of them did. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to give each group who's here just a very brief opportunity to tell you something about what they're doing this month. So who wants to start? Phil?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Nice to be here. I'm Phil Parker. I'm the middle school teacher at the Kaidish School, and I'm proud to have some students with me tonight. Carly from the middle school and Ellie and Kyle from the high school. They're going to carry around a poster that they did, helped us with, around to you, and then bring it around. But we're here to promote our event, a celebration of Roswell. Roswell is a 200-foot-long mosaic of very colorful and creative ceramic tiles. It's located on a retaining wall along Forest Street right behind the Cultural Arts Center. It's probably the largest piece of environmental art in Roswell. Is that right? Could be. Our goal is to simply make the public more aware of Roswell. A lot of people don't know where it is or have never seen it. It's really amazing. For about 10 years, schools, clubs, scouts, and individual artists have come to participate in it and put their piece on. Our event is on October 26th, Saturday, from 10 to 2. And we'll be installing new pieces created, glazed, and fired at the Cottage School. So come join us, put a piece on the wall, and be a part of history. Thank you.
Well, it was suggested I bring a prop, so I've got a little to remind everybody about our Fall Farm Days. October 12th, right after the Youth Day Parade, and thanks to the great Youth Day Parade, we usually have about 800 or 900 people come for our Fall Farm Days. It's a free event, have crafts people. The highlights are like wagon rides and gym panning and things like that. So everybody come out after the Youth Day Parade.
Hello, I'm Fran Larry. I'm the Education Coordinator at Barrington Hall. And in October at Barrington Hall, we'll have performances of Henry V by the North Fulton Drama Club. That'll be on October 4th, 5th, 6th, 11th, and 12th. We will also have on the 17th of October and the 24th and 31st an adult creative writing class, writing children's books. On the 29th, we'll have a cooking class, Fall in New England. And on the 18th of October, we'll have Beasties at Barrington, a haunted tour of the grounds at Barrington Hall. So come join us.
Hello, I'm Tommy Ramsey. I'm at the Teaching Museum North on Mimosa Boulevard. And in the month of October, we have an 8th grade walking tour. And I brought my prop, which is the Reverend Nathaniel Pratt, to tell you a little bit about our tour.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm unaccustomed to speaking into a stick, but it is truly my pleasure to be here this evening. I represent the Reverend Nathaniel Alpheus Pratt of Roswell Presbyterian Church, and I'm here to tell you of two things I know that you'll be very pleased about. First, I have not prepared a sermon for you, and secondly, that the program that we run at the Children's Museum for the 8th grade classes from around North Fulton is beyond compare. The children that come to see us, we take them through 10 different locations. We talk about the Civil War era here in Roswell, just prior to, during, and after. And to keep 8th graders in awe is certainly a great pleasure and a lot of fun. Do come see us.
I'm the Big Mouth Bass from the Chattahoochee Nature Center to tell you about the 30th year of Halloween Hikes. It takes place over 2 weekends, and it is an improv event with costume characters in the woods. Many of you have been to it with your children or as children. We'd love for you to come again and tell people about this family-friendly event that's not scary. It's simply theater in the woods. We also have Harvest on the Hooch with 10 restaurants, many of them from Roswell, putting on tapas-style food, using food from our Unity Garden, which feeds, by the way, the food pantry at North Fulton Community Charities. They've already raised over 12 tons of food. We have live music and art going on and live alpacas. If you haven't seen an alpaca, you might want to come to that. The same day, we have the opening ceremony for the Georgia Nature Photographers Association reception, and that is for Georgia Celebrates Photography. There's so much going on at the Chattahoochee Nature Center, I have to get back to the river now. See ya.
Hi, I'm Jane Swift with Roswell Fine Arts Alliance, and we just want to invite you to our grand opening on Saturday, the 19th of October. And that also is the day that we're cutting the ribbon for the new Art Center East at East Roswell Park. And this is just an example of some of the fine art that you will see and that will be for sale at our grand opening. We hope to see you soon.
Hi, I represent the Song of Atlanta Show Chorus. We are a women's a cappella group who sing harmony in the barbershop style. And on October 8th at Northbrook United Methodist Church on Crabapple, we're going to have a guest night, and we invite everybody who can sing, all females who can sing, from 14 to however old. Our oldest one used to be 85. So if you would like to come join us, find out what we're all about, we would love to see you. October 8th at Northbrook United Methodist Church.
Such a feeling's coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, got the sun in my eyes, and I won't be surprised if it's a dream. Everything I want the world to be is now coming true, especially for me.
It took everything I had not to sing with them. At the Cultural Arts Center, just so that you guys know, in October, we have Crystal Bowersox coming, doing a concert. She was on American Idol, in case you don't remember, blonde dreads, really talented. We don't know who the opener is yet, but it's going to be awesome. So there's postcards there, and I have more if you need more information about that series. So, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, my name is John Parsons. I'm the president of the Atlanta Wind Symphony. And to tag on to the events that are happening at the Roswell Cultural Arts Center, we're going to be doing our first concert at the Cultural Arts Center on October 13th, the afternoon. Part of the core values for the Atlanta Wind Symphony is to provide a music outreach to the community. And we do this through free concerts throughout the years. We will have 2 concerts at the Roswell Cultural Arts Center, free of admission, 2 other concerts at the Roswell First United Methodist Church in conjunction with their choir for their patriotic concert. And we, of course, support Roswell Remembers Memorial Day and a final concert at one of the local elementary schools for Peter and the Wolf. Thank you again for your support of the arts community, and thank you for your support of the Atlanta Wind Symphony.
I'm Alex Paulson. This is Leslie Caruth. In celebration of the National Arts next month, for 2 days, October the 2nd and 4th, we will be hosting an art exhibition down at the Mill for some of our employees' art, and we invite you all to come and join us as part of our celebration of our 20 years in business in Roswell. So we're excited to have this as our first annual.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rochelle Muka, chair of the Cultural Arts Board, soon to be Roswell Arts Commission, we hope, by the end of the night. And I think I've been to many city council meetings. This is by far the most fun one yet. And I think that National Arts and Humanities Month is 31 days for all of us who love the arts, passionate about the arts, supporting the arts, to healthily boast and show off everything that we've got and more. And I think it was evident tonight, things that we've been talking about, that the arts embody our character, our community vitality. They bring our people together, they capture our history, and they capture our future. So we do expect to see all of you at 31 days of events. And, Vijay?
I've got absolutely nothing.
thank you to the mayor and the current council, and in particular also to a lot of the business leaders like Steve Stroud, who's standing right over here. We have come a long way in the merging of, there's been a big commitment to the arts in Roswell for a long time. I've been on the board of the Cultural Arts Board for 8 years. But in the last 2 or 3 years, we've accelerated with quite a bit of velocity of the partnership with business and the arts, and it's going to be a great present and a great future for the city of Roswell with that partnership growing and growing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then. Next item, we will be reading a proclamation for It Can Wait Drive for Pledges Day. It Can Wait Drive for Pledges Day. Whereas the City of Roswell regards the public safety of our driving teenagers and adults as a chief concern, and whereas virtually every adult and many driving teenagers in Roswell and across Georgia rely on wireless service to keep in contact with family and friends, and whereas since the first text message was sent 21 years ago, text messaging has become the preferred method of communications for many, especially teens who send on average 60 texts per day. And whereas 98% of American commuters know sending a text or email while driving is not safe, but statistics show that nearly 50% of commuters text while behind the wheel. And whereas a Virginia Tech study showed that those who send text messages while driving are 23 times more likely to cause an accident involving fatalities or grievous injuries. And whereas a driver that sends a text message while driving not only jeopardizes his or her safety, but also the safety of the other innocent passengers, pedestrians, and other drivers. And whereas through itcanwait.com, Facebook, Text to Pledge, Tweet to Pledge, and events sponsored in communities, more than 2 million people have committed to never text and drive. And whereas on September 19, 2013, AT&T and Roswell High School joined united with students, parents, teachers, and administrators and community business leaders to take the It Can Wait pledge and to share their commitment with family, friends, and others to encourage awareness of no texting and driving. Now therefore, Mayor Axel Martinez, do hereby proclaim September 19, 2013 as Drive for Pledges Day in the city of Roswell, and urge all of our citizens who are licensed and get behind the wheel to take the It Can Wait pledge. And witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and seal this 19th day of September 2013.
Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council, from AT&T, my name is Rich Johnson. We appreciate the support that the council and the city of Roswell has given to their community. It's obvious that the city of Roswell is a great community, and it's obvious that you guys have a great commitment to your youth as we celebrate Youth Day here and the Youth Day Parade in the coming weeks. But it's also obvious that there's a strong commitment to public safety, and that's why this continuing the no texting while driving, It Can Wait pledge is certainly important to our community. It's important to our youth, but it's also important to adults and citizens of all ages. So we appreciate the great work that you're doing. We appreciate the commitment that you have to the city of Roswell and the continued leadership that you guys show. And thank you for everything you do.
Excuse me, one quick question.
I almost got out of here.
Almost, but not close enough. But are you planning on expanding this to other high schools in the area? Centennial High School, Blessed Trinity, and many more?
It's a great question, Mr. Mayor. We're continuing to work with Fulton County Schools leadership to deploy a program that all students can engage in and all students can be made aware. It's something that we have a commitment of doing. We're going to do this not just in Fulton County, but we're trying to do this across the state. On September 19th, the date that you recognize in the proclamation, AT&T and many of our partners did over 40 events across the state trying to drive pledges and awareness of this issue. It's something that our company has a commitment of doing, is going to continue to be a part of.
Thank you.
If I could call upon Councilmember Kent Engelhardt. For the Keep Roswell Beautiful Annual Report Summary for the period of July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2013.
Each year, KRB is required to produce an annual report for Keep America Beautiful, outlining activities and finances. KRB will present a summary of the report, including the dollar value benefits for programs and events. Will Janet Lieberman please come forward?
There you go. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'd like to present to you Randy Switz, immediate past chair of Keep Roswell Beautiful.
Thank you, Mayor and esteemed council members. I'm here to represent Keep Roswell Beautiful and present the annual report and for the value of the services, like-kind exchange, but also to address some of the intangibles that occur when groups like Keep Roswell Beautiful get involved. For example, when we do Adopt a Road, we've noticed that the roads are a lot cleaner for a lot longer. And as Janet mentioned earlier, we've been doing the Rivers Live project for many years now, and we noticed that we went from 6 tons down to 1 ton, and there's a reason for that. And that is that Keep Roswell Beautiful has more or less changed some of the consciousness of the city and the people that live here so that they litter less. So I wanted to talk about just real quick some of the programs that we run, because first of all, we're not going to sing this in a cappella, I want you to know. All right. But I did want to tell you some of the programs, but such as Green Expo, Adopt a Road, Adopt a Stream. We're doing the storm drain marking program, Bring One for the Chipper, the Big Creek Wetlands cleanup, Rivers Alive. We have bulky trash and hazardous waste and a bunch of other programs. So what we try to do is determine what some of the value of that is. And so the dollar value for that was $73,859.04 for those services. And then what we try to do is attach the value of some of the other non-dollar value type things, some of the intrinsic things that we do, and that came to $53,589.31. So that gave the total of $127,438.35 in value that Keep Roswell Beautiful gave back to the city. And as a businessman, I can relate to this part. That's a 16-to-1 cost-to-benefit ratio, and that's pretty darn good. So I'm very proud of our group for what we've accomplished this year, and I wanted to present this check.
This is the check for the value of the hours that the volunteers have given to the city and to Keep Roswell Beautiful.
All right. It's $73,000. All right.
And it is $73,000. Could I ask you all to come down for another picture with the check? Unless you have questions.
All right.
Go ahead. That way everyone out there.
I'd like to invite all members of both councils to come down and take a picture with the large check.
With the large check.
This meeting will be adjourned.
And after this picture, the youth council meeting will be adjourned.
Eyes on so I can see. All right. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Let's have one more hand for you, council. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone on the council or anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Seeing no hands up, all in favor of the motion raise their hands. Passes unanimously. At this time, we have a nomination of Theo Kaiserling for the Recreation Commission. Do I have a nomination? Move for approval. Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Diamond. All in favor raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Next, I have a nomination of Bill Bruce to fill a vacancy on the Historic Preservation Commission. Do I have a nomination? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second by Councilman Orleans. All in favor of the motion raise their hands. Passes unanimously. And now we'll slow down. The subject is the call to vote on the municipal court judge. Mr. Davidson, would you present that?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution to regulate and provide for the calling of a special election, if necessary, to fill the unexpired term of the Chief Judge of the Municipal Court of the City of Roswell, Georgia, to provide Fulton County to conduct said election and for other purposes. When Judge Hilliard resigned August 5th, the charter requires that this council call for a special election to replace the Chief Judge within 60 days. That time will run on October 4th. We wanted to go ahead and bring it to council now, since this is the last regular meeting of council. And we actually have two resolutions in your packet. One is for the March 18th election date, and one is for May 20th election date. The March 18th would be a special election on which the city would be forced to pay for the election due to it not being a statewide election.
Do you have an estimate of what that cost would be if we have it in March?
I believe it's around $150,000 to $200,000. The second resolution is to have the election on May 20th, 2014, which would be the date of the general primary. That way, you could put the question on the ballot then, and it would not cost the city nearly as much.
Now, as I understand it, there's also a consideration of, even if we place it on the agenda, further consideration for council to go with an appointment which would, if the council chose to do that after public hearing, would take this off the calendar. Do you want to explain that?
That's correct. The state law provides that no matter what a city's charter says, that the city is allowed, the city council and its determination can decide that they want to appoint a judge of municipal court. The council has asked for more information. They have asked for a study from the Carl Vinson Institute of Government at the University of Georgia. I received a proposal from them. It's included in it was on the dais in front of everybody today. They will be willing to do the study. The study would not be completed until around October 30th, and then they will be happy to come and present that at a public meeting to the mayor and council, answer any questions you might have, and so on. The charter does say that the council needs to call for the special election by October 4th. Therefore, you will not have all the information. So it's my opinion that you need to pass one of these resolutions at least. And then if you decide in your sole discretion that you want to appoint, then you would be able to just cancel the election.
So this vote does not commit the council from making a later decision to go with an appointment?
It is committing the council right now. However, you can change your mind later.
I think council understands. Any questions that council may have? Mr. Davidson, before I call for a motion. Councilmember Price.
Now, it seems that that we're sort of going through the motions of calling for the election, which we are bound to do by our charter, but then you're telling us that perhaps we don't have to. I'd like some clarification as to, would we need to change the charter, Or do we need to follow our charter? I didn't think our charter was optional.
The state legislatures passed a general law which applies to every city, and it trumps any city charter. Therefore, the general law says that the council at any time, no matter what their charter says, has the authority to appoint a judge. Therefore, if the council at a later date decides they want to appoint a judge, then they are free to do so.
But if we've sworn to uphold a charter, would we not be in violation of our oath? Should we go that route?
The state has superseded the charter. Therefore, you would still be following the charter. It would be my recommendation if you elect to go to an appointed judge to change the charter, and you could do that prior to the election date.
Councilman Eichelhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have the date that qualifying would end if we had a May 20th election?
It would be required to be at least 2 weeks prior to the election, so you would have, if you've got a long time.
It's just 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay. The point being that...
Minimum of 2 weeks, you can call for qualifying prior to that.
Right.
The point being that we just need to have a cutoff point to where we make a decision one way or the other so that we do it prior to it. Because I thought it was a couple months, but okay. Thank you.
Other questions before we call for motion? Do I have a motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
I move to call for a special election for the Chief Judge of the Municipal Court on May 20th, 2014.
We have a motion is by Councilmember DiPolito for the May date. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this subject? Any further comments from council before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion raise their hands. That is unanimous. This time we'll call upon liaison to the Admin Finance Department, Councilmember Rich DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on the administration agenda is approval for the mayor and our city administrator to sign a contract with Jacobs Group to provide services for the Municipal Court Services Reorganization Plan in an amount not to exceed $405,609 and amendments to the FY 2014 approved budget and position control. This item was deferred from the August 26th Mayor and Council meeting. Is being presented by Michael Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. That is correct. This item was deferred from a previous meeting. This is to move the court services work that is being done to an outside agency, Jacobs Group. They can come in. They proposed a work model that would reduce the amount of positions that we have for all of court, going from 16.5 positions to 13.5 positions. The amount would be to not exceed $405,609, and we have the budget amendment included for that, for the group benefits and the transition period. Our recommendation would be to go with the Jacobs Group for the court services functions.
I have a question. Are we also considering moving our marshals operationally from the court, from admin to the police department?
That is correct, Mayor.
Does that require an action of this council?
As part of the reorganization, that would also be included. We can move those over separately as a separate item.
So can we vote on the marshals separately from voting on privatization of the clerks?
Could certainly do that.
And you want, just for the council and the audience, you want to explain exactly what we're doing?
What we have in court services, part of the reorganization, there's a section of that for Jacobs to handle the operations in the court area with the clerk functions, and then there's also a reorganization recommendation. We have 4 marshals positions currently that's under court services that falls under the administration department in the city, and the operations would be more conducive to be put under the command staff organization of the police department. So those 4 marshals would be transferred, those positions would be transferred over to the police department under that command staff.
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Michael, I know we talked about this, and I don't know if anybody from Jacobs is here tonight. Is there anybody?
Their contact we have for courts was here at the committee meeting, and they're at ICMA for this week.
And I kind of ran through this, but I'd love to get that on the record, that I've heard from a number of churches and other people that work in the community about how exceptional our court services has been as far as empathy and compassion in special situations that may not always be like they look on the surface, and spending that extra time. And I know the gentleman from Jacobs heard that, but I just want to make sure that is a priority, because that's a level of service that I don't think we're willing to give up.
And I appreciate that. I think our level of service is going to be what it is today as far as working with our citizens. That, unfortunately, that is our customers. Jacobs understands that, just as the city understands that these are our citizens, our neighbors that from time to time have to come through our courts. So there are different circumstances depending on the cases, and that will always be handled in a very personal manner, just like it is today.
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to get back to the marshals, my understanding when we had this conversation, that's a lateral move.
Correct.
Am I correct? From
Correct.
Marshal to
to
PO1. And the job description does not change. They will still be serving paper, so they will still be doing the job, but just under the Chief Grants and Deputy Chief Easterwood now.
It is part of the PO1's duties to do those things, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Orleans.
And Michael, also my understanding that the current employees will also be able to apply to Jacobs to work with them and also still work in Roswell if that works out well for them.
Yes, sir. We encourage them to talk with Jacobs, apply for their other positions within the city that may be a benefit to them that they could work with if those openings are there. Our HR department is working with them. There's some services that we have available we'll be providing, but they are certainly encouraged to continue in courts if that's what they want to, and talk with Jacobs about that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. DiPolito, do we have a motion regarding the movement of the marshals?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First, I wanted to thank Mr. Fisher for bringing in the gentleman from Jacobs and getting us the additional information that we had requested. We appreciate that, and enabled us to make has enabled us to make a good decision on this. I would like to break this out. I would like to pull the marshals out separately, so I will have two motions. The first motion will be to move our four full-time equivalent, 4 marshals, over into the City of Roswell Police Department.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito to move the marshals. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding the reassignment of the marshals from admin to the police department? Any further discussion by council on that motion? All in favor of the motion raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Then for the balance of the suggestions by the staff, I am glad to hear that our employees will have an opportunity to interview with Jacobs, and I would encourage them to do so. We have had a reduction in the amount of workload in this department, so unfortunately it's one of those things that we just need to take care of and be mindful of the taxpayers' dollars. So with that, I would move to approve the remainder of the reorganization plan that we had not just voted on as suggested by staff.
The gist of this is to outsource the clerks, court clerks through Jacobs.
To Jacobs, correct.
We have a motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Anyone in the audience wish to comment on this motion? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion raise their hands. That is unanimous. That was easy.
The next item on the agenda is approval of a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to amend Chapter 18 outdoor lighting. This is the second reading, and I understand there have been a number of changes. If you'd go over those, Mr. Fisher.
There have. Thank you, Councilmember Dippolito. I'd be glad to. You have a sheet in your packet that has the actual changes that have been made, and then you have the copy from after the first meeting when we made the changes coming into committee, and then you have the marked up copy that has all of the changes on it. But I can go over those on the list for you quickly if you would like, because I think they're everything that we have talked about to this point. On the memo, there was obviously two sections that we talked about where there were modifications that were included in having to change to go to the newer lights with the permitting, and it was suggested to take modifications out from the building design, which if somebody just wanted to come and redo a facade or something, that really shouldn't affect the lights and the permits. So those were taken out going into the committee meeting. At committee meeting, there were a few comments that were made to take the dwelling units in the minor projects and use the same definition for that as we did for the major type projects. So that change was made in 18.2.3a. In 18.2.3c, there was also some discussion about neon lighting, and as some of the prohibited lighting, neon lighting was to be added so that it was not excluded if it was to be backlighting or accent lighting, provided you could not see that neon light source. So it couldn't just be hanging out to be viewed from the public. 18.2.5b6, we removed that entire section. That had to do with the Overlay Improvement District. And that also is one of the things that was brought up in the Planning Commission, was also they had some note about making it more restrictive of the one, but that doesn't even need to be in there according to Alice from our ComDev. So that number 6 went out entirely, and that was part of the committee. 18.2.5c1 was to define security lighting. There was no real definition of what security lighting was, so that definition has been placed in there. Lighting that provides a level of illumination to clearly identify persons or objects and creates a psychological deterrent to unwanted or unsafe activity in the area being protected. In other words, any kind of lights that would shine into an area for that reason can be considered as security lighting, but still must be targeted and directed into an area and cannot flood out into outlying areas. 18.2.5F1, that was in the temporary lighting section. If they wanted temporary lighting and they needed a permit, we moved that to where it was just the zoning director could make that approval. 18.2.5F1C, we removed the 10:30 p.m. extinguishing time for temporary lighting if there were functions that were going later on into the night. On a temporary basis, they could come, get a permit, give us their plans, and be able to go on past 10:30. Those were the changes that were made from either the last council meeting of the first reading or the committee meeting. There were 3 items that were brought up at the Planning Commission. The first one they asked in 18.23b was to include signs under the exempt lighting. Signs has their own sign ordinance. As you all well know, that's a very intricate, very detailed ordinance. So the signs can stay in the ordinance. What comes into play in this lighting ordinance is the exterior lighting that may be shining on lights that aren't normally internally lit. And with that, I would recommend we don't put signs as excluded because they're already in another ordinance, but those lights that shine up at lights still need to follow this ordinance and be targeted specifically at the signs. The next one, 18.2.3C5, stated that we should state exposed neon lighting, which we had done after the last committee meeting, so that one was included. And then where they made the comment about 18.25B6 should indicate more restrictive standards will apply, that is the one with the overlay district that was just taken out completely anyway, so it's no longer needed. So I think we've hit all of the comments that were made up to this point for the second reading. So my recommendation would be that we would go with the second reading with these comments that have been made at council and committee and planning commission.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Outdoor Lighting of the Roswell Zoning Ordinance. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 18, Outdoor Lighting of the Zoning Ordinance of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting Chapter 8.2 18.2 outdoor lighting regulations in its entirety and substituting therefore a new Chapter 18.2 outdoor lighting regulations to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Move to approve the second reading.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito to approval. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Does any council members have any questions or comments? Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification.
Yes.
Mr. Fisher, because I think I missed the last committee meeting. Neon lighting, the on, it says, open, that is not part of this because that is interior to the building. This is
Correct.
just exterior.
This is exterior lighting.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with that. Okay, I just want clarification. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval of a resolution to reallocate unobligated 2012 Community Development Block Grant funds in the amount of $85,206.55 for permanent outdoor structures at the Adult Recreation Center and Waller Park Extension. And first, I'd like to congratulate the Recreation and Parks Department for the cost savings that they've had on the project. That's a great job on their part. And I'm very pleased to see that we're considering adding some additional structures in that area and to Waller Park in particular. So, Mr. Fisher.
And I'll be glad to present this. We do have our grants administrator here if there's any particular questions on the grants.
Do we have a chart showing how this is going to be allocated?
This one in particular is not yet. We'll get into the chart in just a minute on one of the future items that we have coming up. This one is strictly for the amount of funds that was saved from a past CDBG that has to go back into another CDBG qualified project. The target area that we're looking at is Waller Park and Waller Park Extension, which is also the Adult Recreation Center, and the recreation staff had identified a couple of good projects that also fit within the public meetings that we had regarding those parks. So it would be our recommendation that we would just move these funds over to the permanent structures at the Adult Rec Center, then also at Waller Park Extension.
Which structures are they proposing to
There's
build?
a structure that would be adjacent to the Adult Recreation Center that would cover a patio area so that they can use that for programmed activities rather than just be at the whim of Mother Nature. If it rains or gets too hot, they can have a permanent structure over that. And then there's a couple of areas over at the Waller Park Extension around the playground area particularly that could use some permanent structure, and possibly over at the athletic field.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
To approve.
Motion for approval by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orlins. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval to submit the recommended allocations for the 2014 Community Development Block Grant funds. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito, and I will invite Danny Blitz up here to talk to you all about this one if you don't mind. I do have the list. I'll put it up here on the screen, Mayor, so that you can see that and others.
Maybe you can make it larger for the visually challenged?
I will absolutely do what I can. This other one might be better. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's also in your packets in case you can't see it. There's one chart on the back of the memo, and then there's also another chart that the city clerk provided for you. And so basically the last column, farthest to the right, is the recommendation that's before you tonight, and it has the Child Development Association's project at $21,714, the City of Roswell Public Works Waterline project at $94,730.
Is that 194?
I'm sorry, you're right. $194,730. Thank you. Drake House, $20,000. Enable of Georgia, $8,714. Families First at $5,142. Habitat for Humanity North Central Georgia at $13,929. Homestretch at $26,786. The Housing Authority of Roswell at $11,429. North Fulton Community Charities at $19,862. Senior Services North Fulton at $11,138. The YMCA at $4,143. And City of Roswell Administration and Planning at $80,026 for a total of $417,613. And if you have any questions about those recommendations or any of the projects, be happy to
For
do my best.
clarification, the $80,000 is a compliance number to make sure that everyone's in compliance, and that's what we anticipate is the city's cost to do this?
Yes, sir. It's a 3-year management of the grant, so roughly that amount is spent out over the 3-year process.
But we're estimating that's going to be our cost. We're not going to be we don't anticipate money going to the general fund.
No, sir. That is
We're
our
not
cost.
profiting on this.
That actually is a little bit less than our actual cost.
Other questions the council may have? Councilmember Price.
So how many grant specialists do we have in the city?
We have one grant specialist by title. We have many that work for the departments that are actual experts in grants.
So does this mean an additional person, or is this spread out over a number of people, or what exactly?
Now, this is a current position. One current position.
So there's no additional administration required for this?
Correct. This $80,000 goes over several things. Part of that goes to fund the grant specialist position we have in the grants division that works for Danny. It takes the grant liaisons that we have in all the departments, in several different departments that works on grants, as well as they work on other things. They bring everything together to the grant specialist who puts them all together, just like you did managing the Zoom grants for this. That $80,000 includes that and a couple other things, as you'll see, so it's not strictly just for his pay, but part of his pay, that position's pay, comes out of there along with other things, and that's over a 3-year period.
It seems like I recall, and maybe I'm remembering this, but in the past, this was a part-time position.
Correct.
Now it's a full-time position?
Correct. We went to a full-time position last year and approval from mayor and council.
Last year we went from part-time to full-time?
Correct. We're not changing anything on this one. We're just allocating the funds just like we do every year out of a portion of the CDBG is eligible for administration, and this is that portion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Blitch, would you just briefly go over the process and how this worked as far as the system that we used this year? Because I think it was very effective, and I think people ought to know about that.
Sure, be happy to. We're one of the first entitled or entitlement cities in Georgia to go to a process of an online application process for our CDBG affiliates and our CDBG partners. So we have a product called Zoom Grants, which we of course went out to bid for and selected, and that organization puts forth an online web portal. We have basically a 5-week or 4-week process where we solicit applications from the nonprofit community, from the departments here in the city. They put in all of their paperwork. Some of the applications are more than 100 pages. Some are 150 pages long. And they include their financials. They include information about their project, their goals, their objectives, how they're going to measure all of that. All of that is stored on the online system. It's available for the reviewers, which happens to be the Admin Finance Committee. And you can log on with your own username and log in and be able to score and rank and assign dollar amounts. And then all of that is tabulated inside that web portal. And then we actually push out this recommendation that you see before you tonight.
Wouldn't say push out, you introduce.
It was a push, sir. No, you're right. It was a massage. We carefully constructed and delivered it to you tonight, sir.
Does the council have any questions? More questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito for approval. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Wynn. Is there anyone in the audience with any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
The next item on the agenda is approval of a resolution to reallocate unobligated 2012 Home Partnership Program funds in the amount of $50,000 to the North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. This is some funds that were committed from Mayor and Council a while back to possibly go to the Veranda at Groveway, which is the Roswell Housing Authority was working on a project. That project is still in the design planning phase, and at this point is not far enough along to be able to use these funds. We don't want to miss out on the time frame that we have to obligate and expend these funds, so rather than letting them sit in just a committed state, we're asking that we can reallocate these to a project that can be used in the community. The funds have to go to a community housing development organization, and when these funds were available, there was one that was certified, which is North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation. Our recommendation would be to reallocate those funds to the North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation for a project that they have identified for the rehab of some homes. So we would recommend that those funds be reallocated.
Who is the North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation?
They are the Habitat for Humanity.
That's what most of them know it
I'm sorry,
as.
Yes, sir. Their correct name
Just
is
trying to get an
Habitat.
interpretation here.
Also known as.
Also known as Habitat for Humanity.
Correct.
That's what most of us know them as.
Correct.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Orleans.
Michael, it says in here that the money will be used to acquire or rehabilitate a Habitat for Humanity home. As we discussed before, is this new homes coming into their inventory that they're rehabbing, or are these homes that are already owned by homeowners that they're going to help rehab?
I made the exact same question to Danny because I have confused that issue. So these funds are to update homes that they currently have, or to acquire. The 2014 CDBG money they were looking for was for a new program to update homes that have not yet been updated to code. So this is to acquire or rehabilitate.
Well, my question, Danny, is can we designate this to acquire?
Mr. Orleans, the home funds can only be used for three things. They can only be used to acquire, to rehabilitate, and to resale homes as a part of CHODO's normal activity. So we can limit, of course, what they use the funds for. It would be something that we would want to weigh carefully because $50,000 in this housing market may not allow for Habitat or the CHODO in this instance to be able to acquire, be able to rehabilitate or move a family in. It would be something that they would need to probably go after, maybe a foreclosed home if there are any available that meet the requirements. That could they bring them up to code for $50,000? There are some other considerations about location and target area and use.
I mean, as I mentioned once before, I guess I'm looking at the funds being used to bring something new into their inventory, whether they're getting a home and has to be rehabbed before somebody can live in it, or to acquire a new home along with other funds.
The house that they did purchase with the original $45,000 that they got from the home funds, they made the purchase through a program from Bank of America. They acquired the home at a very low price. They used our funds to update the home so they would have ADA accessible ramps and lifts so that the person could pull his car into the driveway, get out of his car inside the garage rather, and then be able to navigate inside the home. They've removed walls in the kitchen and in the bathroom to make it more accessible.
And these would have to be located in Roswell?
Yes, sir.
That's my only concern or question in the motion of trying to take that approach to it rather than putting the money into rehab of homes that are already owned by people. Thank you.
The the rehab of the homes that are already owned by people, not necessarily Habitat for Humanity homeowners, is the 2014 allocation that was approved just a few minutes ago. And my understanding is that is for folks who are possibly elderly, possibly on a limited income, to update their home to make it more weather resistant or weatherproof.
Well, let's get a motion and see if Councilmember Orleans is comfortable with it. We're debating what the motion might look like.
Dr. Price.
Does the council have additional questions? Any additional questions? Councilmember Price.
Do we know how many eligible houses there would be that are already Habitat homes in Roswell? I'm presuming that this is within the city of Roswell, is that right?
That is correct. We met with Habitat, and they mentioned to us 2 different projects that they had in mind. One was another Bank of America previously owned property that they were going to get for a very nominal amount. The other one was one that they were going to use Habitat funds to make the acquisition, and they were going to use the home funds to do the rehabilitation, bringing it up to code.
So your discussion with them is they anticipate using this $50,000 for rehabilitation of newly acquired property?
That is correct.
Thank you. Other questions? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve with the suggestion to Habitat or the North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation that they make as a priority using the funding for the acquisition of new homes or for the rehabilitation of newly purchased homes.
We have a motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Further discussion by council. Councilmember Price.
What are our other options for this money if it didn't go to this project?
Like I said before, it can only be used for acquisition, rehabilitation, or resale. So resale would be down payment assistance, as an example.
You mean outside of this entity? Or
Outside of this entity, there are other CHODOs in the city of Roswell. There's one that has received CHODO status named Homestretch, and they are received status as of August 26th, I believe. They were not eligible back in 2012 when these funds were originally allocated, however.
Are they asking for part of, did they make a request to be considered under this grant?
Yes, the city did reach out to them, city staff did reach out to them, and they have a project in mind that is a part of their rental project, and they are also interested in the 10% set aside for CHODO operations.
Would they be in a position to accept a grant at this time, if the council chose to reallocate it?
Yes, sir, they are eligible.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Clarify that you had said that you weren't sure if they'd be eligible because they actually became eligible after the period of the specific money. Are you sure now that they are?
No, my recommendation is still the same, that I'm not 100% sure that they would be eligible. However, they are certified. We would turn in the paperwork like we always do to home or to the HUD organization, the GUC, the Georgia Urban County Consortium. Sorry, stumbling over that. And we would turn it into them. They would weigh in, probably submit it to HUD. It would probably take, more than 30 days, possibly longer than that. And my fear is that we would be running out of time to actually obligate the funds by December.
That would be my concern, that we don't know, and that it come back and, as often happens, if it's not approved during the time period that money was originally set aside, then it wouldn't be eligible at this point. But I had a separate question to clarify Mr. DiPolito's motion. Are you, forget the exact word, strongly suggesting or requiring that they actually use it for purchase?
My concern with requiring is we don't know what they have specifically in mind, so I was saying to make it that they have it a priority, so really give them the order of our preference.
And I agree with that. I was just concerned if we did require it, we don't know some of the things that Mr. Blitz just brought up. So, okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councilmember Price.
Now, when someone moves into a Habitat for Humanity house, are they not, at that point, sort of aren't they independent at that point? Or are they still connected to the system that brought them the house?
I would say that they are independent in the sense that they are homeowners, in the sense that you're making payments for 30 years. Not independent in the sense that the loan is a 0% interest loan from Habitat for Humanity.
There are strings attached.
So if the person defaults, for example, there is a mechanism in place where Habitat would return the home to their stock, and then they would make it available to someone else on their waiting list who's also income eligible.
I guess my question is trying to sort out the obligation to help to maintain the house once they get it, as compared to Homestretch, where nobody owns it and it's turning over all the time and it needs maintenance between tenants.
They are, in fact, homeowners and also residents of Roswell, once they get their keys and go to closing. They have to put in sweat equity, of course. It's a traditional model for Habitat for Humanity. So they also have to go to 8 hours of instruction as a new home buyer. So part of that is to train them to be prepared, for maintenance and upkeep, and to ask questions about, any kind of extended warranties or whatever else that's related to home ownership.
Do you happen, off the top of your head, know the default rate or how many people stay in those homes?
I do not know for for Habitat in general. I know that for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, which was a successful implementation of 6 homes that we purchased that most recently, and we've had none that have defaulted.
And have they had assistance along the way?
Yes, absolutely. They've had assistance in this form of counseling along the way, maybe mentoring as well as group, almost like success.
What, financial assistance?
Classes. Oh, no financial assistance.
Any other questions before we entertain a vote? Councilmember Diamond.
Mr. Blitch, do you know, I seem to remember when the economic downturn happened that this was a model that Habitat shifted to, and I may not have the timeline exactly right, that because, especially in cities like Roswell, they were buying rehabs as opposed to new construction, that there were things that came up that they needed to do a little more to help those people stay in their homes than the initial economic times when they bought them. Do you know anything about when that model shifted or what percentage they used toward that? I think that's where the confusion is coming.
I don't know. Other than I will say that with the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, that was a 2009-2010 initiative, which was completed in 2011, and the model was, prior to that, you're correct, that they would purchase property. Obviously in Roswell, to acquire property is expensive, and so they were doing less and less houses here, which were the traditional stick-built property with sweat equity in that manner. So they had moved to this model of acquiring either foreclosed homes or homes that needed a lot of rehabilitation, or homes that were on this registry with Bank of America that they were acquiring them for a nominal fee. And of course, when they're acquired in this way, they sit idle for a long time on the marketplace, so there's issues related to vandalism that we've all heard about in the news, and squatters, and terrible things that happen inside of those homes. That we're happy to get them off of the bad rolls and get homeowners in them, taking care of them.
And as a follow-up on the Homestretch question, the audit seems to be the end game here. Do you believe if we were to go with Homestretch that it would stand up to an audit since they were not eligible at the time they applied? I realize you're not the auditor in this case, but I imagine you've done some of those.
They have made impressive improvements in the last year. Haven't seen their most recent audit because it's not available, but ours isn't either, so it's not a
If we
it's
were
not a
to go-
negative on them. I've seen one that was 2 years old that did show some concerns. In fact, so many concerns that we were unable to work with them in the past.
Well, and I feel comfortable that they're probably on the track they need to be on, but I guess if we were to approve money to go to Homestretch, and it did go through the process, and the audit came back and disallowed it, do you anticipate that being an issue? Because I've seen that.
That would never be an issue for the City of Roswell, mainly because we treat this like any other grant program. It is a reimbursement style, so it would have to be spent by the nonprofit, it would have to be documented, and then it would have to have a check cleared through the system. We'd have to have a copy of front and back of the check. That would all be put forth as source documentation to our grant accountant and the finance department, who would approve it, and then we would submit it for reimbursement to the GUC in this case, who would then actually pay the reimbursement back to the nonprofit.
But isn't there generally an audit after a time on these
Yes.
kind of grants, and where they've gone and how the rules were followed? And
Yes, once the funds have been completely spent and the program year closed, if it goes over multiple program years, we have to wait until the second program year is complete, and then we request their either 990 or their financial statements, whatever they happen to be, or in most cases it is an audit. But however, some nonprofits can't afford a full-blown
no, I'm not talking
single
about
audit
the
like City of
organization's
Roswell.
audit. I'm talking about our audit of the grant that goes to them.
Oh, well, the audit that goes to them under this would be from the GUC. So that would be Cobb County would actually be auditing and monitoring them. We have staff that would go out and do a monitoring, too, on a monthly or quarterly basis.
I think I've confused it more. But thank
Is
you.
it fair to say that when they receive a grant from Roswell, we make sure they do it right so the audit doesn't create a problem down the road?
Absolutely, sir.
So we're not concerned about the audit because we do it right the first time.
If we were to give them money, we would give them every resource they needed to make sure they could stand on their own and complete the grant application and the grant administration in a timely and ethical fashion.
Other questions? Have I called for any public comment? I think I did. Any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is Councilman Orleans, Councilmember Eichelhardt, Councilmember Wynn, Councilmember Duplito, and Councilmember Diamond. All opposed. Councilmember Price passes 5-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dane.
This time we'll call upon Liaison to Community Development, Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, sir. The first item is RZ 201-301-214, CV 201-301-216, CU 201-301-219, intersection of Holcomb Bridge Road and Scott Road, L. Berry Teague, land lot 677 and 712. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. This is a rezoning, a conditional use for approximately 5.1 acres located at Holcomb Bridge Road and 140 and Scott Road. The request is to rezone to OP Professional with a conditional use to allow for an independent living facility. The applicant is also requesting 3 variances to the buffer setbacks, and parking. This is an aerial of the location showing the existing property. You see Scott Road and Holcomb Bridge Road with the access into the Walton community location. This is the current zoning of wonderful FCA of the property, dealing with the location. The applicant is requesting the OP designation to allow for a 130-suite retirement residence community. The applicant is requesting the setbacks, variances, the 50-foot setback and the 40-foot buffer along the northern property line, and a variance to increase the parking allowed on the site from our current code requirements. This is the site plan showing the proposed building with surrounding landscaping and parking. This is the landscaping plan indicating what would remain undisturbed. There are some very steep slope buffers adjacent to Scott Road as well as to Holcomb Bridge Road. This is the landscaping along Sentinel Way, which was the discussion by the neighbors of making sure that the landscaping in this area would buffer them from any building located in that part. The applicant has amended its plan to remove a drive that would be in this area and has increased the landscaping for this location. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this use as well as the concurrent variance and the rezoning. They recommended 5 conditions. Condition number 4 and 5, the applicant amended their plan to include those conditions. So staff is recommending approval of the rezoning, the conditional use, and the concurrent variances with the 3 conditions listed in your resolution that you have before you this evening. If you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Can you go back to the number 4 on the Planning Commission where it specifically states there'll be additional buffer plan designed to the satisfaction of neighboring homeowner association? So what has been done to do that, and what is the assurance that will actually take place, or I guess the enforcement side
We'll
of that?
ask the applicant to address that. I believe they've discussed it with the HOA.
Okay. And then second, on the parking, I guess my concern is that we have a number set aside based on this type of use, and I've read all the things about their reasoning, which makes sense. But I guess my concern is are our standards correct if this is a very low use, what's a better way, low trip generator use, are our numbers off? And particularly as we go forward into the UDC.
With our current parking regulation requirement is my understanding, when that number was created, it's a number per beds, was really drafted at a nursing home. And that type of use that it provided that type of assistance as well as coming and going in employee ratio numbers. I think the applicant, the way they have represented their operation with their years of experience of dealing with the style and the numbers of parking numbers, I think is a more accurate calculation. Our Unified Development Code is actually allowing that type of wiggle room by saying, provide us the numbers in similar locations, in similar uses of what you're proposing in dealing with that use. I think we're seeing a definite migration from what someone would have considered a nursing home to an assisted living to if there's any medical type of use, in congregate, and it's wherever that model seems to land, we need to be, is have the parking adjust to that. And the worst thing that we would have would be not have them have enough parking on site, and then they got to find another off-site location for parking.
No, I agree, because their reasoning seems to be valid. It's just that why is ours not following that?
That's because it's never been looked at since
okay.
a long time.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Townsend, along those lines, this is really not a nursing home use. It's really more of an independent living use.
Correct.
So is our parking different for independent living than it is for nursing home?
We don't have a number for independent. So the only number we have to choose from is nursing. That's why it's off.
Okay, so we use that also for assisted living? We use
it for everything.
Nursing home ratios?
Yep, that whole umbrella of uses, yes.
Okay. My next question is, you mentioned this is FCA. I think in our materials here, there was reference by the applicant that the underlying Fulton County zoning is agricultural. Is that correct?
Yes.
So was this property part of the original master plan with the Centennial Development?
Yes.
And
it was included in their drainage calculations. I'm not sure if it was really master planned as part of that, but I do know that it was used for drainage calculations.
So they master planned this with apartments and townhouses and single family and agricultural?
I won't respond to what Fulton County was doing.
It seems unusual that you would have that.
And now it's being cleaned up, which is fabulous.
Okay, so so as far as we know, there are there was no zoning other than agricultural, there were no conditions on this property that we need to be aware of?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Oh, Councilmember Diamond.
I actually have a transportation question. Sorry, they're all waking up back there. Can you talk to me about the amount of traffic that we have there now and what the advisability or feasibility there might be to an intersection at that Scott and Holcomb Bridge Road? I know there's one at Eves, but it seems like we're feeding a lot of people there.
We have a narrow left turn lane. We also have the option of people going around and using the signal at Fouts, so there's some flexibility there.
So when they all leave this area and they all come through that roundabout, come onto Scott Road, and the schools are up here north of that, how they'd have to turn left and go around by the schools and come back around to turn left on Holcomb Bridge?
The need here is for a little bit wider left turn lane and a little bit longer, but there's not an absolute need to signalize this intersection.
And what's the threshold? And I realize I'm throwing this at you just kind of abstract, but I wonder when you have all these people and the schools tied in there, what's the tipping point at which you would look at another intersection?
Usually it's about 6,500 vehicles a day on the side street, and I don't have the number of the existing volume right now or how much it would be with this new trip generation. This is not going to generate a lot of trips.
And I guess my question, is it on your radar as this area has schools and everything? Is that something you guys watch for where that might at some point need that?
Yes, yes, we are looking at that, but right now we're not convinced that there needs to be a signal at this intersection.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to, I'm sorry, Mr. Lowe, I didn't realize you were escaping. I was looking down at my materials. I wanted to follow that up with another question. I think Councilmember Diamond raises a good point. We have this project being proposed. We have the project across the street that is coming up as well. And I guess, you know, have we looked at the trip generation from both projects to determine if combined, then we would potentially need a signal here?
It may need one. With this project, it's not absolutely necessary.
Well, I guess the question is, before we look to approve two new projects in the area, I think we need to know if we're going to need a signal and whether that's something that we need to get some help from would that be something that's impact fee eligible, or how would that work?
It may be.
It may be, or it would be?
I'm not absolutely sure. I would think that it certainly may be possible, but I'm not absolutely sure.
Okay, so we really don't have an answer to the transportation question.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So which triggers first? If we approve this tonight and they go forward, could the impact fee is then calculated after that's all set up? And
just to clarification, now the impact fee is not going to change whether there's a light or not. That impact fee is a formula, correct?
But it
Correct.
would put toward that. Right.
Well, the impact fees it would be collected and placed into an impact fee fund.
Right.
And we could then later decide to spend money from that fund. So we don't make the determination. The impact fee is fixed upon a set formula. The expenditure is approved by this council, not on a project-by-project basis, but as you all determine it's appropriate. So They're not necessarily tied. It's not, you don't have to make the determination. We're not going to either raise or lower the impact fee depending on whether we put a light in here. That determination is, what we charge them is fixed, and what we spend them depends upon what y'all want to do. Council, does that help you? Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, clarification, is this project impact fees? Will we be charging impact fees for this project?
Yes.
Okay, and the project across the street will also be impact fee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? This time we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor Wood. My name is Mark Lowen with Lenity Architecture. We're here on behalf of Hawthorne Retirement, the proposed developer for this site. I appreciate what's been said by staff up to this point in time. I want to just take a minute or two to talk about our project and our use, tell you what the process is to what we've got here, and then I've also brought along our civil engineer, Brian West from Kimley Horn, and our our landscape architect, Shannon Skinner, is here as well, and also Mr. Tague is here, the owner of the property. If I can't answer the question, they probably can this evening. What we're proposing, has been stated, is a 130-suite retirement residence, and I guess the most important thing is to point out is where we fit in the facet of senior housing here. We're considered an independent living, or in some jurisdictions they call it congregate care retirement residence. It is not a medical facility. But it is a congregate care in the fact that we don't have individual units. We have what we call suites, because each of our suites don't have kitchens. Part of their monthly rent is covered is 3 meals a day, snacks and activities. In fact, the reason we have residents moving into our facilities is not out of a medical need. It's actually out of choice. In fact, we typically find the tipping point for our residents moving into our type of facility is it's time to give up the car keys. That's really where we're at. It's time. They're still active. They're still physically able to get up, take care of themselves. We don't provide those personal services such as bathing, dressing. The services we do provide are the 3 meals a day, on-demand transportation. We have a van that will take them to church, doctor's appointments, volunteer activities, shopping, wherever they need to go. They sign up. The van will take them there. And that has a great impact, or reduces the impact of traffic. We find that about 20% of our residents, when they move to the facility, bring a car with them. Most of those cars go away within 12 to 16, 18 months. The other services we provide along with meals is laundry, individual room cleanup, and all kinds of activities. These are active seniors at this point in time. Beyond that, let me see, what else can I fill in that would help you at this point in time? Let me just kind of take you through the steps where we've been so far as through the process. We have been working with the local Centennial HOA through the process with our neighborhood meeting. In fact, Sven is here this evening. He's going to reiterate some of the concerns and the questions we've been going through working with them so far as buffers and working on design and that sort of thing to appeal with that. We've been through initial design review. Came back with a pretty positive feedback with our preliminary on that. We've been before the planning board or planning commission at this point in time. You've seen the conditions. We support those conditions. What can I tell you about the project? What questions can I or the people I brought with me this evening answer for you?
Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to get back to the parking.
Sure, please.
It's very interesting that y'all are asking for more parking. Okay, 82 spaces that I'm seeing. But you say only 20% of your residents will have cars.
Correct.
And I'm assuming that only 1 car per suite.
Correct.
So that comes down to like 26 parking places. Okay. Which leaves you, if you're asking for another 56 parking places.
I have a total number of 79 parking spaces I'm looking at here.
Well, I'm looking at what I'm reading here. It says proposed 82 parking spaces.
Check my numbers. Hold on.
Okay, I'm just reading what you did.
Right.
Okay.
That's an earlier iteration. We've actually revised it since then.
And then you said, which I love, the reason that people come here is because it's time to give up their car keys, and 16 to 18 months goes by, and usually the cars go away. So I'm still trying to figure out how come you're asking for more parking spaces if there's not going to be that many cars
But we
there?
have staff parking, we have visitors, and we have other services and deliveries and other
Well,
vehicles that come
deliveries
throughout the
wouldn't
day.
count because you should have a delivery zone. Okay, so how many employees do you...
Historically
hold on.
speaking, I'm sorry.
One at a time.
How
Okay.
many employees do you have?
We
Do you
have a total equivalent of about 18 full-time positions.
18 full-time employees. Okay. And if we do the 26, that's
And I would
that's
say on
44
maximum
parking
shift, you're
places.
probably looking at about a dozen that would be there on high shift.
Okay. I'm still trying to figure out how come you're asking for more parking. That one really kind of bothers me a little bit, but maybe somebody can explain that to me later. But I do have another question.
Sure.
During Planning Commission, I think it's you that made the statement that that there will be a 2-year bond that requires the completion and maintenance of the landscape improvements. Okay, I did not see any, I did not see anything in here about who would hold the bond and who would make sure that all this is being done according to the approved site plan.
My understanding, that is the staff informed me that that's a city requirement, so that's handled through the city.
Okay, good. I just want to double check that you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think there was another thing about that the HOA could look at the landscaping plan to make
Correct.
sure that they're comfortable with what it, because my understanding is they would like to have it very compatible to what they have now.
Correct. A combination of being compatible, and they also want as much screening, especially along Centennial. And Sven will speak to that, I'm sure, when he gets up here in a few minutes. We've been working with them on that process. My understanding is, and I've already invited to make sure that they're going to be at the design review process as we go through this to complete it.
And the design review board also.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm still, if you can convince me that you need more parking,
Well, let
me
me tell you the history on it. That's probably the best way. Hawthorne Retirement and the Colson family has been developing this type of facility for 28, 29 years now, and they've found consistently that a ratio of about 0.6 spaces per suite works ideally for visitors, residents, other possible services that are coming and going from the site. A 0.6 is about 0.6 to 0.7 is an ideal number. To be quite honest, I cannot remember the last time we have actually asked for an increase in parking, because most jurisdictions are running more at about 1 to 1.5 spaces per suite for an assisted living congregate care type use. So this was actually pretty unusual to ask for an increase versus a decrease. We're usually looking to hit in that 0.6, 0.7 per suite ratio. So this is what we've found consistently works. And one of our big concerns, especially with this site, is it's not like they're going to go down the street and park somewhere. We don't want it to spill out into the private roadway, into the roundabout, Centennial, in that area. We want to be able to make sure we contain our parking within our site, because we don't want to spill into the rest of the Century HOA area.
Councilmember Diamond.
Just one other thing, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Wynn.
So you're okay with this construction of 8 parking places in the northeast quadrant as part of the Planning Commission?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I think my question is more for staff about where the UDC falls on this new number. Is that in the draft yet? On parking for this kind of facility, since we haven't had it before?
I believe the UDC at this point is asking for the facility to provide their best information at the time before it gives a we no longer have a maximum. That is going away from the chart, but the minimum number that's being picked is really more driven by the actual facility and the utilization that they provide, because they, depending on the mix of independent, care, nursing, medical activities, each facility is a little different, and we're not wanting to fit a box of saying every room that they put in needs 1.5 parking spaces. I think that would be a little high. And if their experience that says 1.6 or 0.6 or 0.7 is the number, I think we're waiting for that information to come in, and that's how the UDC is currently, I think, being drafted.
So will there be a number based on information we're getting that will be in the UDC, or we're ongoing, we'll be asking the
I
applicant?
think ongoing, we're going to be asking facility by facility. At least that's the way I believe it's drafted.
And then there's a case that comes to us about, or to you, about how that, I mean, how do you make the determination whether that's a reasonable number? Is there no, seems like somewhere there ought to be a standard. I mean, I realize you don't want to put a box in, but.
Right.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
If you cook and clean, can my wife and I move in?
My wife asks me that most every Friday night when I get home from work. In fact, we kind of, around the office, we refer to as Friday night services. So you get home Friday night, you don't want to cook, you don't want to clean, you don't have to do your laundry. They get to do that 7 days a week. It's what we call a catered lifestyle.
Sounds great to me. I do have two questions on these two conditions, both the landscaping and the parking. And I understand from Mr. Townsend that's been included in there somewhere. If I suggest later to add those back in, or do you have any problem with that, just so it's clear that those are...
Explain to me, add those back in.
Well, they're not in the existing proposed conditions, as I understand. Is that correct, Mr. Townsend?
I believe, aren't they a part of the staff report as conditions? We support the conditions as shown in the staff report, yes, absolutely.
But that does not include...
You can just put them back in the resolution if you want.
And I guess, so my question was, if those are in there, you're okay with that? Just
You bet,
clarify.
absolutely.
Great, thank you.
They're not driving, but they're not in a nursing home. Are they still walking?
Absolutely.
Well, this would be my concern. We're trying to create a walkable community. And we have a library across and down the street. We've got a wonderful city park we hope they will visit. And I'm just looking at the route they would have to take currently. It seems a roundabout route. They wouldn't be able to, and I know the hill's pretty steep, but have y'all thought about the possibility of a pedestrian connection without having to go all the way around the block and Centennial Way and down with perhaps a pedestrian connection down to the intersection?
I don't know how familiar you are with the site, but with the grades we have, it's really steep. Keep in mind that if they want to go to the library, we'll be doing regular runs with our van to the library, the senior center, the park. The other thing that we've found historically with our sites, and you'll notice that we have walking trails that encompass the entire building. We find that the number one exercise activity for our seniors is walking the site, because it's a safe place to do it. And we find whether you're in Venice, Florida, or in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, they're out there walking the site every day, and they can tell you how far it is. 3 laps equals X, let me tell you.
All right, so what's the elevation change between Scott Road down at Holcomb Bridge and the parking lot?
I'm going to call on my civil engineer for answering that question. Brian? 40 feet.
40 feet.
Yes, sir.
And so at a, 112 for handicapped accessible, how many feet of trail would we have to put in to get from the parking lot down if we stayed at the 112 slope?
Council members, Brian West with Kimley Horn. One of the objectives of
There was a question there before you get to the objective. Let's get to the question, then we'll get to the objective.
There's a considerable number of trees in that buffer
but let's
area.
get to the question first, and then we can
You'd
talk
be
about trees.
zigzagging all
Because I
over the
like
place
to get
and-
an answer to my question before I get the defense. The question is, and you're an engineer, and I think you're a smart engineer, if we had a trail that was 112 pitch, or maybe 114, and to get and 40 to descend that 40 feet, how long would the trail be?
It would be, let's see, about 480, 500 linear feet, roughly.
So if
Plus
I
landings,
started
you'd
there
have
at
about
Scott Road,
you'd have about 600 feet total.
if you'll look at the site plan, if I started at Scott Road and went up, traversing that, where would I be in that parking lot? How far back would I be? Just out of curiosity. See if you can show me on the map. We've got it on the screen here. There may be a better site plan.
You're asking if you started Generally,
Scott Road and Holcomb Bridge Road.
right, generally in this area.
Generally in that area, and if I went up along Holcomb Bridge Road, at what point would I be with that 112 pitch, 400 and something feet, where would I be in the parking lot? I don't have a scale. I'm sure you do.
Got a scale here. Roughly, it would be from here at the corner up to about this location up here.
All right, if I went down Holcomb Bridge Road, where would it be? If I traversed paralleling Holcomb Bridge Road?
You would roughly walk from about here to about this location up in here.
Thank you. Now you can give me the rest of the story, now that we've got that point out of the way. Now I understand where...
We have a series of graphics we can show you that include the tree save areas that are densely forested there, and one of the objectives was to preserve as much of the native trees that are in those buffers with minimal impact. The other problem that we're going to have is if we start cutting into that slope, we may have slope stabilization issues associated with the 2-to-1 slopes and 2.5-to-1 slopes that we currently have there. This was part of the master plan for the Centennial property, was zoned with that property as a conditional use, and the property was mass graded at the same time that the rest of the property out there was graded, so they basically tabletopped this site to provide a pad for this property. The last thing, and then they planted the buffers along both Holcomb Bridge and Scott Road, so one of the last things we want to do is go in and take out a lot of the existing vegetation that's out there and disturb the slopes that are out there as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Anything, what I want to do next is allow the public comment, and you'll have closing, but in closing it will be rebuttal. It will not be the opportunity to present additional information. It will be able to, responding to either questions of council or new points that have been raised by the audience. So anything else in your presentation in chief?
Just a quick point of clarification. Based on the information we received in a zoning verification letter, the underlying zoning under Fulton County, what we have is OI, and not agricultural. And that was based on a letter that was produced June 10, 2002.
Thanks.
Yep.
This time, if we'll entertain questions or comments from the public. So if you'd like to speak, come forward. Yes, sir, if you'll give us your name and address. And there's a 5-minute limitation on public comment.
Don't worry about that one. My name is Sven Ramstad. I live in 325 Glen Reserve in Centennial. I'm the president of the Centennial HOA. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come here to speak today on behalf of the HOA. We're not against this project. We're not very excited about it either. Having said that, we have worked with the developer. He's been responsive when it comes down to answering questions and being on site with us, and also trying to address the concerns that we had. The primary thing is that we believe the project is just the sheer size of it on this small piece of land, and the changes that's been presented has not been for reducing the buildings, but has been to reduce some of the infrastructure. A couple of the things that they have reduced is these 8 parking spaces, which we think is a positive development, and we hope that that is truly implemented. And there have also been some changes to allow for the landscape buffer to be a little bit bigger than it originally proposed. I think at this stage the key thing is that we want to try as best as possible to protect the look and feel of Walton Centennial, and the landscaping is going to be paramount for this. Therefore, we're looking at some assurances from the City Council that these landscape proposals are truly implemented. No disrespect to the developer, because I worked for the developer myself. They have a tendency to maybe shortcut the landscaping when it's all said and done. We just want to make sure that that does not happen in this case, because as I said, it will dramatically change the look and feel of the neighborhood. So some assurance there would be great. My final comment is to the transportation. I would invite them to come and drive to Scott Road and try to get on Holcomb Bridge Road. It is not an easy task without those developments coming in, and it's going to be more and more difficult. So with the schools and so on, we hope that it will be reconsidered and have a traffic lights put up there when these two developments comes in. So thank you very much for listening to me, and said let's get some assurances that the landscaping is implemented.
Could come forward and state what staff does to assure compliance with landscaping conditions and the rezoning.
The rezoning this evening is part of your resolution. Condition number 1 is the stamp plans dated received September 12th by the Community Development Department. In those set of plans, there is a landscaping plan. I believe it's sheet... It's identified Roswell Retirement Residence Preliminary Landscaping Plan. The last revision was done on 9/11/13. This landscaping plan still processes through staff to the Design Review Board, and they are the final board approving the landscaping plan. This landscaping plan is then included in the land disturbance permit as well as the building permit for the construction of the building. The certificate of occupancy is not issued unless it is compliant with that plan that's approved, final approved by the Design Review Board.
So once there's a final approval, once the design review passes on this, and they very seldom have limited landscaping.
Right.
Usually they add to it, if anything. Then our inspectors go out there as part of the building permit process.
Correct.
And they compare what's on the ground to what's in the site plan.
Correct.
And if what's on the ground is not consistent with what's on the site plan, what happens?
They don't occupy the building.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment from the floor? The public hearing is closed. Further discussion by council before we entertain a motion. Councilmember Wynn.
I think, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to let Mr. Olmsted know that he can speak to the DRB when it comes to what you would like to see. So just keep that in mind and make sure that you're there to be able to speak your mind and let them know what you need. They have a very great landscape architect that sits on that board, and he knows what he's doing. So please make sure that you're there at the DRB.
Councilmember Diamond.
So it will go to DRB anyway. Do I need to put that in a condition?
No.
No. And what about the 2-year bond? Is that's
code.
our standard?
Standard
I was
code
thinking it was
requirement.
1. Okay, so it is 2. Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for transportation to follow up on my question. Do you think it's practical to put a trail in from the parking lot to Scott Road and Holcomb Bridge? It would shorten the distance they had to walk to get somewhere. I actually like walking through the woods. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do on a trail. I was at Lita Thompson Saturday on a gravel trail through the woods. Have
Mayor,
y'all looked at it? Any thoughts?
I think it's a great idea, and I think you're right. I think you bring up a very valid point. When they, having just moved my mom from Florida up here for the exact same reason, I'm a little bit more familiar with these sorts of senior living issues, and they do walk a lot, and I think you bring up a good point. Going up the slope is going to present some engineering challenges, because you'd have to think about, the slope, the drainage, stabilities, maybe some retaining walls. It could be expensive, but the idea of not having a direct access down to either, probably not Holcomb Bridge, but maybe Scott Road would be probably an amenity, I would think, to the site plan. But I'd like to work with their civil engineer a little bit more and maybe flesh that out if that is your desire.
Well, that would have to be council's desire. Brad, is this something that DRB could look into and require if they thought it was appropriate?
They could definitely look into it. I mean,
if they said we want it, could they force the issue? they thought it was practical.
Unless you put it in as a condition, you're not going to get them to force it as an issue, because it's not a general requirement. I mean, they are providing a sidewalk that connects to
Well, could we
Scott
give
Road.
them the option to require it? I think we need, no?
If you put it in as a requirement, what they're going to quibble about is how much does it cost, and how much retaining wall, and the issue is going to be, do I have to tear out this 500 trees to be able to do this, and does it make sense?
I hate to put it in there as a hard and fast condition, because there are a lot of other things that need to be considered.
Right.
That's nice and pretty, please.
Councilmember Diamond.
But there are sidewalks all the way along both the streets.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. As a follow-up to the discussion on the landscaping, this is a question, I guess, both for the HOA and for the applicant. The latest plan we had was dated September 11th. Is that the one that you all discussed? And okay, so that is the one that's in our packet and going to DRB.
Actually,
Yeah, please.
the only changes in the September 11th is that at Planning Board, we were requested to give better details along the north buffer area. The area of most concern for the HOA was along Centennial. That hasn't changed. The changes were basically up there along the north buffer area where the rain garden and the drainage swale area was.
Okay, but it's substantially similar
Correct.
to what we have.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilmember Diamond.
So if this was originally zoned OI, is that not a use that, I guess I'm not clear why we're rezoning if it's already got OI on it.
We're not sure that the OI, when the county allowed the independent living, so we're rezoning it to Roswell OP with the conditional use.
Okay. Alice is making motions behind you. I'm getting the three-part answer right there. Okay, thank you.
Brad, isn't there already sidewalks on Centennial Way and Scott Road in that intersection? I'm trying to look at this plan, but it's so small I can't read it.
Yes.
So I guess, Jaron, what you were talking about and what their engineer was saying, looking at the ramp, Jaron, the ramp came all the way up to here on that way towards Centennial Way. I would think it'd be a lot easier maybe cutting a trail just through from the building part, the back of the building, over to Centennial Way, and then they've got sidewalks all the way down and around, and we might have fewer hip replacements by doing it that way, too.
Mr. Davidson offered a suggestion for y'all's consideration, and that was to go to Transportation Department and say, Transportation, if you believe that the benefit outweighs the cost, in environmental cost, I'd like us to take a second look at this. I know we haven't taken a second look, so I don't want to hold up the rezoning, because we want to move it forward. But to me, we're trying to become a pedestrian community, and this group, more than any other group, is going to be walking. And if anything, walking I don't believe leads to hip replacements. I believe walking leads to a longer life, because that exercise keeps people moving. So, Mr. Asenbach, what are your thoughts on this?
Contact me in our office. I just gave their civil engineer my business card, and I would be happy to explore a variety of possibilities that hopefully would make the pedestrian connection without being onerous to the development, without sacrificing any of the tree buffer, and still becoming an amenity to the site, and also to help mobility. It provides another mobility option.
Which road? Scott or Holcomb Bridge?
But, we'll have to look. I mean, it's going to be a site-specific thing. Can we just say we'll make a pedestrian connection to either Holcomb Bridge or Scott Road as, maybe the most feasible connection?
Well, first, council would have to approve it, but I'm trying to
Yes, sir.
structure something that council might support. Mr. Davidson, you had reservations and suggestions. What are your reservations and suggestions?
I think if you're going to do that, you're going to need to make it a condition, and then you could leave it in the discretion of the transportation director on whether it's going to be required after he goes through it with their civil engineer.
Well, I don't know what position council's going to take. I'm just making a suggestion. But before we get to council, I'd like any last words from the applicant on that suggestion, your thoughts, your reservations. Council Depolito would like to speak first.
Thank you. I agree with the need to have pedestrian walkways, and I completely agree with it, particularly with this type of use. I'm having a hard time looking at the site plan and thinking about those grades and all the existing tree buffer, trying to understand how we could actually put in a pedestrian walkway that doesn't just absolutely massacre that buffer that we currently have. So, Mr. Hasenbrock, have you seen the site plan, and have you thought about where this trail could potentially go?
Yes, sir. I mean, looking at it just now, my thoughts are, of course, it's steep in one plane, but if you cut across those contour lines, like the Appalachian Trail, where you just sort of go across it, and the way he pointed out, I mean, it obviously with we'd have to look at exactly those areas. We'd have to look at storm drainage, for instance. You'd have to put some ditches or something so that it doesn't create an erosion problem when you cut across those contour lines. But I think there's some bio-friendly swale type of things that we could do that would preserve the buffer, would allow for the trail, and still would be able to make the connection without a great deal of problem.
Rich, I'm not envisioning an 8-foot sidewalk. I'm envisioning a walking path.
Sure.
But there's already
narrow.
There's already an existing sidewalk. That's why I'm not understanding why we're trying to add another one.
My reason is there's existing sidewalk, but you're tripling the distance potentially to get down to where you're going. And the second point is, I'm just talking about me personally. If I have a choice to walk on a sidewalk along a road or through the woods on a narrow trail, I walk through the woods on a narrow trail every time and enjoy it. I'm just looking at my experiences and where I've seen trails and seen possibilities. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but I know that it is something to consider. And because we have people that are walking, anything that I can do to encourage people to walk in Roswell, I'd like to look into. So just a thought.
One other aspect of that is that it might be a more pleasant experience walking under the canopy of the trees as opposed to, say, walking out in the sun.
If you have trees, but you have to tear them all out to put the path in.
Well, I mean, you can meander it through a.
I guess my point is every weekend I go mountain biking, and I know I'm not expecting these people to go mountain biking, but I'm up along very steep slopes in the North Georgia mountains, traversing the hill, and these are hiking trails. And they work. And whether it's in North Georgia mountains or in the city of Roswell, I see it as something that works. And to me, it would be an amenity. It would encourage people to walk, and it would anything you make to make walking more pleasant is helpful. And a good example are the hiking trails that we have on Lita Thompson and in Big Creek. Those are environmentally sensitive. They're a gravel surface. They're narrow in places, and you don't notice a loss of trees. I mean, you have to be sensitive in the development of it. You can't take in a bulldozer and clear a 8-foot trail in there. But I don't know if it's feasible or not. But any chance that I can get to put in trails, I'd at least like to consider them. And I know that you've heard enough of me. Councilmember Diamond.
Well, I applaud the idea. I just think, you're talking about people who are giving up their cars, and I think about the elderly people in my life, and the not that elderly are not comfortable walking on uneven surfaces, on slopes, with roots in the way and all the things. I mean, I can just tell you, just the day-to-day stuff I do with the seniors in my life, they're not all as adventurous as you are and don't have as many bruises as you end up with. But I'm just having trouble seeing. I think security is an issue. I think safety is an issue. I find it odd to be in a position to be arguing against a trail because that goes against everything that we want. But in this case, I'm just having trouble seeing it. And I think for the neighborhood, there's just not that many trees in that area. You're up against Holcomb Bridge Road. Any buffer you can keep and maintain up there and would add to the peace and quiet in the neighborhood and still allow you to have a walking trail around there. And I believe these people do this all the time around the country and have developed a model that works. So I think I'm comfortable with sidewalks all the way across the property.
I will allow the applicant to put the nails in the coffin.
Well, she stated 90% of what I was about to say, and part of our concern is if I go back and tell our developers they want us to put in a gravel trail for our seniors, I'm going to get my butt kicked, let's be real honest, because we also have to build those trails to ADA standards for our seniors. And then if we're talking about, we've already committed to the Centennial HOA that we are going to protect and preserve as much of Centennial, so we're not touching that bank any more than we are. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen on that side. We've made that commitment. I like the idea. I don't think it works for our site. I want to be real honest with you. I like the idea, but a natural trail in this sort of situation for our seniors, our average senior is an 82-year-old female widow. Some of them are still driving. I have an 86-year-old mom. I don't know whether I would put her on a path like that. On a sidewalk, I would do it, but a sidewalk is going to just tear the side of that hillside out. And one of our other concerns is the security issue, which you brought up. Like I said, she basically covered all of my points. I don't think it is appropriate for this site. If we didn't have the topography we had on the banks of this site, I could really get into supporting that. But I don't think this is the right site for it. And we do have good sidewalk access that is nice, stable sidewalks for our seniors.
Further discussion by council. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I know you guys are planning a good project, want to do a good project, want to please your neighbors, so I have no doubt of that and trust that you'll do that. But I also have the issue of trust but verify. And I guess the question for Mr. Townsend is, if it gets to the point of accepting this condition, which is designed to the satisfaction of the neighboring HOA based on density characteristics and so on, what is the mechanism for that? How do you generally do that? You don't want to let one person say that, no, you can't do all this.
I have no idea how to enforce that.
How do we then make sure that it is something that they're happy with?
I don't know.
It isn't reduced. Is that how the DRB would ultimately be the one to determine what those elements would be?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we have an enforcement ability.
I don't think there is an enforcement ability.
Other than DRB putting that plan forward. Okay. So can we put a note somewhere that we really we really want DRB to make sure that these things are met that the residents want, and then we'll be happy. So we can contact them, I suppose. Thanks.
Further discussion. Councilmember Diamond.
Well, and I'm assuming DRB reads Planning Commission in our minutes before they go into their discussion.
We pass them forward, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Councilmember Wynn, did you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. I just want to make sure that, I'm sorry, I just took one of those atom bomb things that it burns your mouth. That transportation does look very, very seriously about Scott and Holcomb Bridge. That's my neck of the woods. You're taking your life in your hands trying to make a left turn out of that, and especially during school, especially parents taking their kids to school and the teenagers leaving at night. So please, please look very, very closely at that.
Further discussion before we entertain a motion. Do we have a motion?
All right. I move to approve the resolution recommending approval for this property with concurrent variances 1 and 2 as listed with the following conditions, 1 through 3 as listed on the staff report, adding the reduction of 8 spaces from the original plan, dated, do we have a site plan date on that?
Reduction.
The Planning Commission plan.
Okay, from the Planning Commission plan.
Was that a reduction or an increase?
Yeah, it's a reduction of 8 from their original request.
Okay.
And the landscape buffer plan shall be provided per DRB. How do we want to word that? We can't really say per DRB. We just, I feel like we need to note it somewhere, but I'm not sure how we do it in a motion. Okay. Landscaping plan is approved by DRB. That's my motion.
Is that your motion? We have a motion by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DePolito. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That passes unanimously. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Councilmember Orlins, you need to return. We need you up here to make good decisions. Councilmember Diamond.
Yes, sir. The next is text amendment TA130355 to amend Chapter 12.4.19 Building Materials of the zoning ordinance regarding building materials allowed in the Groveway Community Overlay District. This is the first reading, and Mr. Townsend is here.
This ordinance relates to changing the language from prohibited to inappropriate materials in the Groveways. It allows for the community overlay dealing with the criteria for allowing for what would be originally in the ordinance prohibited material to be changed to inappropriate material. This is in conjunction with the applicant's request for Lennar dealing with vinyl or vinyl-clad windows specifically. But this is language that has been drafted by the City Attorney's Office and is at first reading, has been reviewed by Planning Commission, and is in front of you for review.
Mr. Davidson, if you'd read the ordinance, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 12 of the City of Roswell zoning ordinance regarding building material allowed as part of new development. Now therefore, pursuant to their authority, the mayor and city council adopt the following ordinance. Chapter 12 of the zoning ordinance is hereby amended by changing section 12.4.19 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first read.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I guess just want to clarify what we're doing. So we're saying that something is inappropriate, but we are doing this to allow it.
You got it.
That's what I thought. My rhetorical questions. So I guess then the concern becomes, is there any way to make sure that it's at least a certain level of vinyl or whatever these other ones are, because then you open the door for not only some things that may be a high standard that, I've talked to someone saying there actually could be some vinyl that could be good, but then you've opened the door for those that are not. So how do we make that, or can we make that happen, or keep the bad part of the inappropriate?
You might as well direct that to the city attorney.
Okay.
What are we doing here, Mr. Davidson? Just for background, as I understood that this was driven by the fact that these vinyl-clad windows were really the only ones that were feasible. Is that a fair statement?
That was a representation from Lennar,
You know,
correct?
Yeah, and as I understand,
Because they don't want to spend more on...
well, no, I have vinyl-clad windows on high-end houses because to paint wooden windows is a continual problem, and they may be wooden core vinyl windows, very high-end, but the maintenance on the vinyl is so much lower than is on wood that takes periodic painting. I've chosen vinyl over wood not because of the cost, but simply because of the quality and the long-term maintenance. So I know that there's I understand the justification for it, but I was trying to at least get that background. My understanding was there was a practical problem in doing it out of wood, and vinyl would be much preferable over the aluminum windows. And so the vinyl was actually vinyl clad is a high-end window. Councilmember Davidson, before we go on, Councilmember Diamond, you want to add to that?
My impression was that HPC wanted to approve these. They liked the look of the ones that were presented, but they did not have the option. So this gives it it doesn't make it automatic, but it makes it allowable under certain circumstances if it meets certain criteria. But absent those, it would still basically be prohibited.
So in essence, it's the equivalent of conditional.
Yes.
But that still does that solve the issue of, it still allows them to do the lower quality? I mean, I agree that there are some that can be acceptable quality, but how do we keep it at that level?
Could staff respond to that? It's my understanding it would have to be approved by y'all, specially approved and not allowed as a matter of right. Is that a fair statement?
Right. Basically, it's still not allowed unless they can show that it meets the criteria. And the criteria is what's set forth in 3148.
Right, which is our standard how you get a variance, but
right.
That still doesn't address the quality. You can get the cheapest vinyl out there.
But you're going to have to present it, and when you present it, if it comes in that it's the cheap vinyl, the HPC is not going to approve some cheap vinyl in the historic district. I mean, typically.
No, we're trying to open the door, so...
Other questions? Councilmember Price.
Again, Section 31.4.8, what is the exception? And I guess that would be directed to legal?
Do you understand the question?
I do not understand the question.
I'm here. It says right here.
Right.
There's 7 reasons.
Right. Those are the criteria for a variance. Is that correct, Brad? I think that's what that is.
Can somebody list those, please?
Section 31.4.8, criteria for approval of a variance. Any applicant requesting consideration of a variance to any provision of the zoning ordinance shall provide written justification for one or more of the following conditions exist. A, there's an extraordinary and exceptional condition of practical difficulty pertaining to the particular piece of property in question because of its size, shape, or topography that are not applicable to other land or structures in the same district. B, the literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance would effectively deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties of the district in which the property is located. C, granting the variance requested will not confer upon the property of the applicant any special privileges that are denied to other properties of the district in which the applicant property is located. D, requested variance will be in harmony with the proposed purpose and intent of this ordinance and will not be injurious on the neighborhood or to the general welfare. E, the special circumstances are not a result of the actions of the applicant. F, the variance requested is the minimum variance that will be possible of the proposed use of land, building, or structure in the use of the proposed districts. G, the variance shall not permit a use of land, building, or structure which is not permitted by right in the zoning district or overlay district involved.
So it sounds like really the only one that applies is D?
The requested variance will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of this ordinance and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or to the general welfare.
Is there any other one in there that would apply?
That would not be my determination. That's the Board of Zoning Appeals to make that determination.
So they would have to, using any of those materials, they'd have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals?
That needs to be directed to legal.
Is that the procedure?
I think what this is saying is that they have to meet those criteria. It won't be going to the Board of Zoning Appeals, it'll be going to the, in this case, it would be the HPC, would be basing it on those criteria. It's not actually, you're not granting them a variance, but you are basing your answer on the variance criteria.
So previously, because it was prohibited, it was just never negotiable. Is that basically it?
Not considered, correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
One other aspect, so we're specifically trying to get the vinyl windows, but we're also allowing now, by doing this, mirrored glass chain link fencing, backlit vinyl awnings. Is that correct?
Metal siding.
Is that correct?
Or any council understand the question? And if so, please give us a response.
Everything there, fiber, cement, siding.
They would be inappropriate, and then somebody could bring in something and they could be allowed. So they would not be allowed unless they presented something to HPC showing that they met one of the variance criteria, and it could not just be cost.
Right. Okay.
Other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
So if they meet the criteria, does HPC have to approve them?
Those criteria are very subjective.
Okay.
It's very hard to say that it's, that the applicant didn't cause it themselves on something like building material.
Can't hear you, David.
It's very difficult for an applicant to prove, if HPC turns something down, it would be very easy to defend. One of the criteria is that the applicant did not cause the hardship themselves, and it's very easy to show that the applicant is causing the hardship themselves, because that's what they're proposing. So
I think a better way to say this is you are placing in the hands of the HPC the discretion to approve an inappropriate material, whereas before they did not have the discretion. You would have to, we can talk about these variance provisions a lot, but I don't think that's the best way to understand it. Really what you're saying is it's in their discretion. If they believe you've got a good cause, they can grant a variance. If they don't, they can deny it, and it's a discretionary call, not appealable. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it would be appealable to mayor and council.
Well, it's not appealable to a court. They couldn't go to the Superior Court and say, will you... And if it came to council on appeal, your council decision would not be appealable. Is that a fair statement?
They could take you to court on it, but
they wouldn't have good...
They'd be highly unlikely.
They don't really have any solid grounds to
Correct.
appeal.
So if I came in with a chain link fence and HPC said no, it could end there. It would end there.
It probably should end there. I don't know that it will.
They could appeal to mayor and council with y'all.
Okay, but we're the final.
For the city, yes, and then if they didn't like that, they could take it to Superior Court, but...
They would have no legal foundation for an appeal.
So opening this door doesn't leave a legal foundation?
Do I?
I mean, this isn't opening a door that leaves a legal foundation?
Not for like a chain link fence. I mean...
Unless they could show you put money in your pocket, and then they could probably use that as a grounds for appeal. But they're not going to... That doesn't happen. They would have to have some other basis other than you just... They didn't like your judgment. They'd have to show something extraordinary. They're not. This is not going to be appealed. With David is saying you can, like you sue anybody for anything, you can appeal anything. That doesn't mean you have any grounds for it. You're really placing in the discretion of the city whether they approve these projects. First the HPC, and if it's appealed, then it would come to you.
And probably the cost of suing us would cost them more of just doing it the other way.
Councilmember Price.
In what area is this applicable in?
What was the question again?
What area is this applicable in?
Groveway Community Overlay.
In the future, is the presumption that it goes away under the UDC?
As drafted, the Groveway Community Overlay does go away.
So this is just an interim request, or how is it proposing to translate into the UDC?
Now, the UDC would have design guidelines. We would have to
Design
address
guidelines.
this as part of
Right.
the design guidelines on the UDC.
Right.
And the council could continue this over or totally change it. But I would anticipate this would be part of the design guideline discussions, not the UDC discussion.
Right.
And as a practical matter, the bottom line is anytime you have a hard and fast rule, you're going to bump up against limitations, and we're just trying to give discretion to recognize maybe the rule needs a variance. Just as in this case, we ended up vinyl was a better product than was the best product available.
So was there any other way to carve out what's trying to be achieved rather than lumping all these items into it?
I didn't carve it out. It was the city attorney.
I'm sure the city attorney could establish parallel variance requirements, but this was a quick way to get there.
We could change it to just say that vinyl windows are inappropriate materials and everything else is still prohibited.
But you may need to grant an exception in the future, and we'd be back here with the same discussion. What we're really trying to do is provide flexibility for products that meet the intent of what the council wants to do, even though they don't meet the specific
And I know we had
materials
a pretty detailed discussion about vinyl-clad windows, but, I don't recall that we've had any discussion about mirrored glass, chain link fence, metal siding, fiber cement siding. So all those are discussions we haven't had. But
If this council wishes to limit it to vinyl sidings and appropriate materials, that could be part of the motion. We can address it if a problem rises in the future. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brad, Mr. Townsend, did HPC review this, and what was their opinion on it, if they did?
The applicant brought to them a vinyl
No,
product.
I'm talking about the changes in this ordinance. Did the HPC look at the changes in the
Yes,
ordinance?
they supported it.
And they support it?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Do I have any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve first reading, deleting the materials mirrored glass and chain link fencing from the list.
So what is on the list now, just for clarification? What's still on the list?
Backlit vinyl awnings, vinyl or vinyl-clad windows, windows with removable muntins, grills, or muntins that are sandwiched between glass are not considered appropriate or compatible, wood or aluminum-clad windows, metal siding, including vinyl or aluminum, fiber cement siding with a wood grain surface.
We have a motion by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just a clarification, by removing the mirrored glass and chain link fencing, we're no longer saying that those were inappropriate, which I don't think was really your intent.
No, I think we're making those back to prohibited. Sorry. Thank you for that.
All right, so mirrored glass and chain link fencing are prohibited. Everything else would be considered inappropriate?
Yes.
Okay. Second.
Motion and a second. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. This is just the first reading. You will have an opportunity to give further comment before the second reading. All in favor, let's receive the hands. Councilman Orleans, Councilman Wynn, Councilman DiPolito, Councilman Diamond. All opposed. Councilman Eichelhardt. All abstaining.
Is the current wording, like the paragraph on metal siding, vinyl, aluminum, we already had that as appropriate? Is not inappropriate? Well, it's not changing, though. The wording says metal siding, including vinyl or aluminum, is not considered appropriate or compatible. That's already in there, right?
That was prohibited.
Now it would be inappropriate. Under this motion, the vinyl and the metal would be inappropriate. What would remain unprohibited is mirrored glass and chain link fence. Those would be prohibited. There would not be any discretion on those. The rest of those formerly prohibited products materials would now be inappropriate, which would leave it in the discretion of Design Review Board of whether to approve or not.
Wait a minute. Go look at it. It's in black letters. It's not a strikeout or an addition. Is that the way it currently reads?
Yes.
Don't look at it the way it currently reads. As proposed, after this motion, that would, as I understand it, if this motion passes, we would have chain link and mirrored glass would remain a prohibited material. So we can argue about how it's written, but how it's written is irrelevant because this motion is going to make it clear what it will be going forward.
I'm just clarifying that metal siding, vinyl and aluminum has always been considered inappropriate.
It was prohibited.
No. So all three of those paragraphs were prohibited.
Staff, is that a yes? See if you can respond to Councilmember Price's question.
I think the confusion is it says under prohibited, it says they're not appropriate.
Right.
Which is different from the inappropriate that we are putting on the other things. So I think we need to clean that up for second reading.
Yeah, because it's not like a comma, it's a period, and it's like these are new sentences.
Right, but I think where it says it's not appropriate, it's to explain that it's prohibited rather than under this new category of...
I'm sure staff can clean it up. It is too late for council to start
I think you get the
drafting
problem,
on the fly
right?
because we'll be here for 3 or 4 more hours because drafting on the fly does not work well at this time.
Second reading is scheduled for next Monday. Hopefully the attorney's office will clean it up.
We'll clean it up. And if we don't clean it up, and if you'll get it to council, we'll have a further discussion. Is this going to come to committee in between now and the next reading?
No.
So do we have a committee between now and the second reading?
Yes.
Let's bring this to committee for discussion of the language.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
David, you'll have it drafted for committee, right?
Sure. So let's bring it to committee so that we don't have to discuss it further tonight. You got 2 choices. 2 hours tonight or 10 minutes tomorrow.
It's fine with me.
Councilmember Price, anything else?
No, I just wanted to clarify if those 3 paragraphs previously were...
You make a good point. Staff's going to address it.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of the first reading, raise your hands. We're going to count again. First reading, that's Councilman Orleans, Wynn, DiPolito, and Diamond. All opposed? Price and Eichelhardt. Passes 4-2.
All right, next item is approval of an appeal to Article 7.1, Standard Construction Specifications, Section 2.1.6A of the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances. Ms. Alice Wakefield is here.
Mr. Jeff LaBelle is appealing to Mayor and Council to allow an additional driveway at 1220 Oak Haven Drive, which is located in the Brookfield West subdivision. The standard construction specifications states that if you have less than 200 feet of frontage, you can only allow 1 driveway. Mr. LaBelle is seeking permission to allow a second driveway. This has been reviewed by the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Transportation has no objection to the second driveway. And it's required by the city code that if someone disagrees with the standard construction specification, it must be appealed to mayor and council. And Mr. LaValle is here if you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions before he comes to the podium? Thank you, sir. Come forward, and if you'll give us your position. And I appreciate your waiting so late at night.
Thank you, sir.
You get the gold prize for waiting till so long.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wakefield.
Maybe they'll take pity on you.
At 1220 Oak Haven Drive, I have a very narrow and obscured egress and ingress system off of Oak Haven Drive. It's approximately 57 feet up to the top. There you go. Up to where I have limited parking. There's nowhere to turn around so you can pull out forward of this driveway onto Oak Haven. That's my plan, as you see, the house and whatnot is kind of...
So you need this so that you don't have to back out into the street?
Yes. And a member of your transportation department does recommend this due to it being pretty dangerous to back out onto the street.
Transportation department, are you allowing this, recommending we allow 2 entries? Thank you, sir. Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Price.
I'm just curious why you don't just put a turnaround, or you just want a circular drive?
Well, it is actually it's going to be a one-way type of a deal there. I don't really know what a turnaround. I don't have really a spot for a turnaround except for right in the middle of the yard would be my only place. So to make it look pretty, and that's my plan.
And so that's going to require a curb cut?
Yes, ma'am.
And the expense is borne by?
Me.
Any other questions? Any further discussion before I entertain a motion? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Diamond, second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience, other than the applicant, have any comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Wakefield. Take care.
Appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
This time we'll call upon Recreation and Parks Department. No, do we have one more thing from Recreation Department Liaison, Councilmember Jerry Orleans.
First item on the agenda is the second reading of approval to amend the City of Roswell Code of Ordinance, Chapter 14, Section 14.4.1 through 14.4.5. And this is just the same wording that was approved in the first reading, creating a new Roswell Arts Commission. The new members of the Roswell Arts Commission were here but gave up and left. But they were in support of the wording in the first reading, so I move for approval of the second reading.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 14, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, Article 14.4, Cultural Arts Board, the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 14, Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia is hereby amended by deleting Article 14.4, Cultural Arts Board, in its entirety and substituting, therefore, a new Article 14.4 to read as follows, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this would be the second reading.
We have a motion. Was that a motion for approval, Councilman Orleans?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Orleans. Do we have a second? Second by Councilman Eichelhart. Any further discussion by council? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands.
Question.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Price.
Is there a fiscal note attached to that, i.e., if these are evening meetings and we now assign a staff to that, is that overtime, et cetera?
I guess the question is this
It's the same as
Morgan?
It's the same as it's been.
Do we anticipate any new cost as a consequence of this? So the same practices, the same staff appearances before and after? Councilmember Price, does that answer your question?
I just was asking it because of the red lettering. I thought that was new. It's not new?
When you say it's not new, what it's are we talking about?
Morgan's
That
role
line.
right now, there's nothing, changes just makes it more flexible.
Is this the first reading? The
Second.
This is the...
This is it?
Any other questions?
To answer your question, there's no financial impact from the change.
Any other questions?
There's no financial impact. I'm satisfied.
Any public comment? Any further discussion by council? Did we get a motion in a second?
Yes.
It's getting late. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is approval of a resolution to appoint Roswell Arts Commission members. And that list was handed out to you tonight. That would be Lee Howard for 1 year, Kim Hutchins for 2 years, Lee Walker for 2 years, Deborah Inu for 3 years, Rochelle for 3 years, Larry for 4 years, and Sandra for 4 years. Or Sam, pardon me.
It's my understanding these are consistent with the current terms, so we're just sort of having to reappoint them to their current term on the old board to the new board. I don't know why we have two different boards, but I'm sure legal has a good justification.
So move for approval of the resolution to establish each board.
Motion and a second. Motion by Councilman Orland, second by Councilmember Wynn to approve these terms. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is the approval of the mayor and city administrator to sign contracts for the FY 2014 Cultural Services Program allocations. And they're in the list that you've all have. The Atlanta Wind Symphony, $4,500. Friends of Roswell Library, $2,000. Georgia Ensemble Theater, $5,000. Michael O'Neill Singers, $4,000. Riverside Chamber Players, $3,000. Teaching Museum North, $3,500. Roswell Historical Society, $1,000. Roswell Fine Arts Alliance, $3,000, for a total of $26,000. And this is through a process through the Cultural Arts Board Department.
Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Motion for approval by Councilman Orland. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Further discussion? Any questions or comments? Anyone in the audience have any comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll hear from Transportation Department Liaison, Councilmember Betty Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before we begin on transportation, I'd just like to revisit the thing that we passed on the Roswell Arts Commission, because I just want a clarification.
Okay.
And I know that the final wording that we decided on at the first reading was slightly different. I'm not sure I appreciated this before. From one of the earlier proposed wordings, and one of the proposed wordings said, the administration department head shall appoint a staff member to serve as staff support, and then in the final reading it says the city administrator. I'm just wondering, is there an appreciable difference between the administrative department head and the city administrator?
That was included in the first reading, and that came out of committee meeting when there was some discussion about it being the division head over administration, which is the assistant city administrator, versus the division head over Parks and Rec, involving two departments. So the wording in the agreement was changed to make it the city administrator for the flexibility and not have to deal with two different departments.
So that means it could be somebody from either department, or?
Correct. Could be, I guess, basically anyone.
Well, the key is that now the appointment is made by the city administrator, right, not by subordinate.
Right. Not by assistant city administrator.
Or Joe Glover.
Right.
Any other questions? does not require any further discussion because that motion has passed.
The first item in the Transportation Department is number 32, approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a construction contract with Summit Construction and Development, LLC, for the Holcomb Bridge Road Multi-Use Trail in the amount of $681,557.40. Steve Asenbrack will...
We are precise around here. We keep it to the penny.
40 cents. Thank you, Councilmember Price, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council.
Can we make it 39 cents?
This is their bid, Mayor. It is a great honor to tell you that this is our first Roswell DOT bond project that we're bringing to you for construction. It is the Holcomb Bridge Multi-Use Trail. We issued an invitation and received 11 bids. This is the project that goes from, on this graphic, along Holcomb Bridge from the steeplechase entrance on the western side all the way over here to basically Nesbitt Ferry, which is Holcomb Bridge Road, which is South Holcomb Bridge Way on the eastern side. It is 7,000 linear feet, which is 1.3 miles, a 5-inch thick concrete pad along the south side. It's going to be, you can see this little graphic right here, not too well, but I can blow it up for you a little bit. It shows you the cross-section, which will be the trail that will run along the road. It will be 8 to 10 feet wide, and it also includes 160 linear feet of sidewalk into the Holcomb Bridge Middle School. You have a middle school right now where you have no sidewalk. We're going to add that sidewalk. So we are prepared to construct this as soon as you approve it, and we can get these guys under contract.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Price.
Are we sharing that cost within the school property with Fulton County Board of Education?
Well, that was part of the negotiations for the easements and the right-of-way that we needed from them. Okay. So no, we are paying for this, but that was part of the agreement. They donated the rest of the right-of-way, and that was part of our negotiated agreement.
All right, thank you. So it's more than a mile.
It is more than a mile. It's 1.32 miles, as a matter of fact.
All right. Great, thank you.
Do we have a motion? Do we have other questions? Councilmember Wynn.
Timeline.
You approve it tonight. We immediately begin to circulate the contracts. I mean, honestly, it takes 60 days to work through all of the contracting, but we should be, this fall, we will be breaking ground and building it.
Okay, and just real quick, I had a conversation with the principal.
Too late for the election.
Yeah, no, and she was really happy that she's going to get a sidewalk down to her school, and I think that was a good trade-off, so thanks for working that out.
Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the construction contract with Summit Construction Development, LLC, for the multi-use trail.
Motion by Councilmember Price for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Any further comment from the audience or council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is unanimous.
Thank you.
The next item, number 33, is approval to adopt the update to the Transportation Master Plan. Colonel Asenbrack.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. I would like to introduce our Transportation Planning Manager, Mr. Chris Chauvin, who has really done a great job with this, to introduce this next item.
Thank you, Steve. Mayor and Council, thank you. Before you tonight, I'm asking you to take action on an update to the city's Transportation Master Plan. As we discussed at the work session on August 26, we really focused on 4 key areas. We updated the city's functional class system throughout the entire city. It looked at all roads at a collector level and above. We also incorporated a new connectivity program, which does not commit you to actually looking at specific connections, but it puts it out there so that when we have redevelopment and development opportunities, that it gives the developer and the city the opportunity to look at where we can make these new connections. I've also asked to take a look at an administrative procedure that we can take action on the master plan without coming to you every single time on a very limited amount of issues, such as when we update census data, for example, or when we find typographical errors. So basically, when I need to do administrative cleanups, that I have the capability of going into the plan and making those revisions. I would then report that to you at a later committee through the information table. And then we made a series of administrative changes like we always do. We updated the census data, we refreshed the pictures, and what have you. At the work session on the 26th, you asked staff to take a look at a variety of different things, which I released to you via an electronic memo on September 11th. Specifically addressing clearing up some of the language when it comes to the specific administrative procedures. We did put language in there that was talking very specifically that we would not be addressing CIP projects without coming back to Mayor and Council first. These would all be considered long-range projects. We would also, anytime that we're talking about refining project costs, that we would come back to you either via committee or work session. And then there was a clarification that needed to be done between the Transportation Master Plan and the upcoming UDC. So we've added some additional language to beef that section up so that we can show the connection of when the UDC is being implemented, that we can see that Transportation Master Plan connection. So that's the information that I have for you tonight, and I'll entertain questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Price.
Yes, ma'am.
Can a citizen find this master plan online?
As soon as you take action this evening, I will work tomorrow to break down the document in bite-sized chunks, what I call, where they can get it uploaded off the web easily, but I'll have it updated on the web tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
A couple of questions about the connectivity program, which I agree with in general. I guess my concern is that we're putting very specific locations, which I understand we're not committing to, but that they're in there. And at some point, somehow these things always become a plan. And, I'm just concerned that there are a number of places that we don't know that people want it.
Absolutely.
We know that people don't want it in places. I don't want us to be in the position of saying that we're approving this. So how do we do that to where it's like you're saying, it's a theory, it's out there. It doesn't mean we're going to.
Sure.
It's something that we're all interested in the program, but I'm really concerned about actually putting those specifics.
2 points, and Steve or Clyde, I'll also ask if I need some clarification. We put some language in the document itself, in the land use and the development section of the document, that simply alludes to the fact that the city has a connectivity program. We also built an appendix into the document that has the map that shows these connections. It's meant for when a development or a redevelopment comes before us as a staff, that we're looking at those opportunities. It then takes it to the next level. Is it feasible to build? I mean, some of these connections may be very difficult to build. We haven't gone out and done the engineering. Earlier we were talking about slopes and trails and trees and that type of thing. None of that, we're not at that level. It's a high-level planning tool for us to look at making those connections. And there are not specific projects identified. There are specific connections that are identified, but we did not go into the master plan project list and say this project from X to Y, this project from Z to A, that type of thing. We kept it very high level.
Right. I guess.
Please come to the microphone.
Yes, come on.
Brad can do that. I can't do that. But so basically what Clyde did was look at a parcel map. So if a parcel has, say, a road stub and it's connected to another parcel, he just kind of did a broad feasibility that, hey, this looks like kind of a natural connection. Now, if there's a creek there, if there's a 50-foot drop, we don't really do those kind of analysis.
Let me ask this question.
Yes, sir.
Is there language in the plan that says this is a concept, it's not binding, something to that effect?
Yes, sir.
These are simply concepts to look
Correct.
into, but the council has not mandated this?
I don't have it. Starts the conversation. It basically, yeah.
So,
David was correct. It basically...
but there is language. Can you read that language?
I would have to pull out the actual document to read the language, but we wrote it intentionally where it's not spelled out that this is required, that it is something that needs to be looked at as development and redevelopment takes place. I mean, I can get you that information, after, but I do not have the document with me.
I guess my concern, I agree with the general, all that again, but we've had several projects in the last a year or two where nobody wanted that connection. It's like, well, why did we even talk about this? Well, because transportation told us we had to have it. And I don't want that to be what it ends up being.
Ken, I think the best way to address it is in the language of the plan itself to qualify.
I agree.
UDC connection.
At the workshop, you asked the question, where in the UDC are these connections made? And that's where they are made, because more than just looking at the plat maps and some of those areas, we have studied some of the connections and looked at topography and make sure that they're not through somebody's backyard or where they are through somebody's backyard, that it's a long backyard, it's a minor location impact. We tried to minimize the impact on the houses. Yes, in some places you have to go through there to get there because there's no other way to go. I mean, the whole point of the program is to connect two places to get
Clyde, but I think you're missing Ken's point, and that is we just want to make sure there's language in the plan that says these are not mandatory connections. These are simply, begins the conversation, and it's something to look at, and it's not the council is saying you're not in a position to say these are required. You're simply in the position to raise this as, just as I did tonight, raise the question.
The plan, the transportation plan says it just that way. I mean, rather than, I'll just paraphrase it says it just that way. The purpose of the connectivity program is to identify two developers that there's something we want to look at. What it tries to do is say, those ones you don't have to look at, but we would like you to look at these ones, and gives you a map to look at. So it answers the question about where we would like for them to look. It doesn't require them to do it. It says look at these as part of your design. And then in the UDC, the other part of the connection is, when do you look at it? You have to look at it during development. We want you to look at it during development. So in order to get them to look at it, they have to look at it. And the policy says in the UDC, the Transportation Master Plan Connectivity Act must first be consulted when designing new development and must be complied with as determined by the Transportation Director. So that you have that opportunity to look at that, and if it is a requirement, then it comes to you as part of the development review to put it in or not to put it in. And it's our recommendation to put it in, and your ultimate decision to take it out or not put it in.
So you're just making my case for what I was concerned about.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about
what he was saying. But
you're not wrong about the previous ones we had to bring to you, because we had no choice but to bring those to you and make suggestions on those ones because the opportunity was before us. And yes, you're going to get those kinds of opportunities. But in the past, we were having to force the developer to look at something he didn't want to look at. Now he has to look at that and come back to you and say, we see you have a connection here, we think this would make a better connection. So he will engineer a better connection because he's doing it during the process as opposed to us trying to make him do it later on.
Is it possible he could come tonight, if let's say we had a steep slope, he could come to us and say the connection's not feasible for this reason?
Absolutely.
I guess, Ken, using tonight as an example, if we had shown a connection here, rather than me asking the question for the first time, they would have said, well, we looked at it, we looked at the trees, we don't believe it's feasible for these reasons, and they would have been prepared with that answer versus me raising the question for the first time and they're trying to answer it on the fly.
We have connections through that area, but it's just not in that one particular development that we're looking at as far as connectivity trail. We've talked to Walton Communities about the possibility of having a trail through their neighborhood through an open space area, not in that particular development. So, no, in that case, we didn't make a recommendation, and you didn't have the discussion. So, tonight is a perfect example of yes, we can do it, sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. We've told them where to look, and we're not asking them to look in other areas. You can still ask in a certain development if you want to do it. It gives you the flexibility to require it if it's appropriate, and an engineered solution as part of the development. We can't pre-guess where all those other ones are going to be or whether it's going to be feasible because we don't know what the projects are going to be.
All right. Kent, does that answer your question, or do you have further questions?
Oh, it answers the question. I don't know that it resolves my concern.
Why don't we do this?
It is what it is.
I have the document with you tonight. I think the qualifying language is critical. My suggestion is getting late. You don't have the document here tonight. Let's look at the qualifying language and focus on the qualifying language. Everybody understands the principles, but I think Kent's concerned with the qualifying language. Sure. Is that appropriate? So let's wait till we have the qualifying language in front of us and can discuss the language. The concepts we got, qualifying language is where the details are.
If it's too much
I would
trouble,
suggest a deferral.
or if you want to pull that one piece out and approve the rest, that'd be fine.
Move to defer.
Motion to defer to the next meeting. Because this isn't going to take a lot of time. We can have the language, you can have that discussion. Y'all understand what qualifying language we're looking for?
Yes, sir.
We have fifth Monday.
Let's not fifth Monday. I don't want to put this on fifth Monday. I want to put it on the next regular meeting. October 14th. Is that acceptable, Councilmember Price?
If that's a good day for everybody, that should be it.
Motion to defer until October 14th? Is that your motion?
It is.
Is there a second? Second by Councilman Eichelhardt. All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Passes unanimously. The last item really doesn't require closure. David wanted to give y'all an update on where Lost was, and I don't think that's a sensitive issue.
Basically, the certificate has been filed with the Revenue Commissioner. City of Atlanta has filed for an injunction, but the judge has yet to rule on it. So right now we have a filed certificate.
Kind of hard to enjoin us after we've already done it. That's it. If you've got any specific questions about where that is, Mr. Davidson would be glad to answer. But no closure tonight. We're done.